What's going on, everyone? Welcome into Blazers Uprise Live. This is a free agency preview edition. We're going to preview free agency, which starts tomorrow at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's 6 p.m. Eastern. For any of you over on the East Coast, thank you for joining us tonight. We'll take some of your questions. We'll kind of preview free agency, talk about specific free agents, talk about Norman Powell, talk about Zach Collins, and that is the plan for tonight. Is there anything else we should talk about, Eric? We can, we wing it like always, so we can get to it.
But. Well, we can talk about some of the teams that have cap space that can worry us for some of our free agents, and we can talk about the impact of that. And of course, I want to say what both of us are looking for right away once free agency starts. So.
Yeah. So that's what we're going to talk about. What's going on, chat? Hopefully you guys are having a terrific day. Our stream tomorrow will start at 2 p.m. We'll start it an hour before free agency goes live. I don't think there's going to be a big trade for the Blazers before then. It's pretty late tonight, Derek Favors got traded at 1 a.m. in the morning Pacific time, so you never know. But we'll go live. If there's a big trade in the next couple days, we're probably going to be live for it because I assume that would happen between 3 p.m. tomorrow night and about 10 p.m. And usually our free agency streams are 7-8 hours long. So it's the biggest stream of the year, the longest stream of the year, and we're looking forward to it. Yeah, you just want to hop into it. I feel like we should just kind of hop into some of the topics and then we can take questions and then that's how we should structure this. We should hop into the topics, discuss free agency, preview things, then we can take questions on that stuff, and then we can talk a little bit about the stream tomorrow because I want to ask the community if there's any features you want to see. I also want to talk about some of the features I might try and implement tomorrow. So let's just hop into things, Eric. Let's just dive in the deep end. What do you want to talk about first in terms of previewing free agency for tomorrow?
Let's talk about what... The clock hits 3 o'clock, what us as Blazer fans should be looking for right away.
Yeah, and that is a Norman Powell signing.
Yes. I feel like if the Blazers have Norman in the bag, if they've already spoke with them, feel pretty confident he's going to resign, I feel like it'll happen fairly quickly.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, it kind of the same thing with Hood last year. It was like a couple hours into free agency, but at least we signed him and, we can talk about whether that was good or bad, I guess. But that was the one thing we were looking for when he opted out. Is he going to resign right away or what? Are we going to lose him or what's going to happen? Thankfully, he did resign because that's what got us Norman Powell to begin with. We would have had the contract to match in a trade. So I think it's looking for Norman Powell to resign. And I'm actually more confident than I've ever been that Norman Powell is going to resign.
What's that?
It's because the Blazers, I know for a fact, have met with Norman Powell, both Olshey and Billups, in Vegas. They did so after their meeting with Dame. Mm-hmm. Since that meeting, Norman Powell has made 2 Instagram posts, one of which was a baby in Portland Trail Blazer gear, and one of them was him wearing Blazer gear on a practice court or whatever. And so that leads me to believe that the meeting went fairly well because most of the time, what do we see when someone has a bad meeting or is getting ready to leave a franchise? They unfollow everyone on Instagram or Twitter or whatever and change their profile and don't post pictures of anything related to the team they were previously on. So I'm actually pretty excited about Powell coming back. I'm not sure if he will for sure, but I think the chances are pretty good that we have an indication that he wants to be here.
What do you think that means in terms of a potential CJ trade then?
I think they have to make 100% sure because if they trade CJ for a power forward or something, let's just say they somehow got Siakam, and they give up a bunch of assets to do so, but then Powell doesn't re-sign. We have Siakam out for 2 months possibly, and then we have a huge hole in shooting guard. It's like, how do you plan for that? So
I disagree. I feel like you don't have to wait for Powell. And here's why. And I said this to Zach O on Twitter. If Norman Powell doesn't resign, like if you did a Siakam trade, it's like, okay, then you'd have a hole at the shooting guard position. Otherwise, if Powell doesn't resign and you still have CJ at the shooting guard, then you still have a hole at one of the forward positions. You know what I mean? Like, you have to replace Norman Powell as the starting small forward, or maybe you still go out and get a power forward. Like, you still have a hole at a position no matter what. Right. If Norman Powell leaves, we should have the full mid-level exception to replace the starting shooting guard. You know what I mean? So I feel like, if anything, doing the trade now will make it more likely he would come back. And that's kind of why I asked you that question. Like, do you think, we told Norman Powell, yeah, we're going to trade CJ for a forward, you can come back and be the starting two, and that's like what was said in such a meeting? Like, that's kind of maybe something that happened. That's just speculation on my end, but I feel like, if anything, doing the trade beforehand would only raise the chances Norman Powell comes back, and if we do the trade and then he doesn't, I don't think it changes all that much, because we still have a hole to replace, and we would have about probably $9.5 million for the full mid-level exception to go out and try and find a starting two.
Yeah, I guess I see your logic there. I feel a little more comfortable with some of the free agent wings for once. This is like the first time I've ever felt that way with like an Otto Porter or a Nick Batum type player, where, I guess like Batum could maybe play the two a little bit, but like, I just feel more confident in those positions being filled, finding a backup wing with our mid-level, than I am a starting caliber two guard. I haven't even really been looking at that much in free agency, but you're talking about like a Wayne Ellington, maybe you get lucky and get like a Reggie Bullock type, or I don't know, like Alec Burks.
Burks.
Yeah, those type of players. I guess that would be fine. Get Hood back, I guess.
No. Well, here's the thing. If that happens, it wouldn't necessarily be us having to use the mid-level exception to replace starting two guard. We could try and package an asset to a Derrick Jones Jr. and go out and trade for a starting two guard. Like, I haven't really looked at those trades, because the hope is that we don't have to resort to that. So I haven't really actually gone down that path and looked at starting two guards for a Derrick Jones Jr. sort of trade. Maybe you throw in a Nasir Little into that. I don't know. Like, you can maybe package some assets there. So I feel like we would have enough flexibility to go out and fill that spot, that you just gotta, if the trade is there, you just gotta take it and hope that, okay, this could help us bring Powell back, as well as, like, you don't want to sit on a trade and then have the team that's willing to do it, say the Raptors are willing to trade a Siakam. You don't want a random team to come in after they strike out on a free agent, and then they offer a trade for Siakam that Toronto can't refuse, and then we miss out on him. And then we lose Norman Powell because CJ's still here, and we couldn't swing the trade that we were planning on doing. You know what I mean? So I just feel like there's not enough of an incentive to wait on a trade like that. Like, if it's there, you just got to do it.
Yeah, I guess my thinking is, of course, if Toronto's like, we'll trade you Siakam, and we're like, oh, can you just wait for a few days? Like, it'll be okay, but we'll trade it on Monday or whatever. Then, I completely agree with you, but I don't feel like those kind of trades we've gotten our full offers, because other teams are kind of waiting to see how free agency shakes out. A team like Toronto wants to know if they get something back for Lowry, or if he signs with a team that doesn't need to do a sign and trade. It's looking like he possibly could go to Miami, and they could get Precious out of instead of having him leave for nothing, which is a nice addition. And then they can get a Dragic that they could ship elsewhere. So stuff like that does influence how teams will look viewing forward. But I don't know. I guess the Powell situation, I just feel like I have to give Olshey credit for the way he treated Powell when he got here and stuff like that. I think that went a long way. I feel like Powell wants to be on the West Coast. He's got all his family out here. I feel like, see, the thing is, I think they're comfortable if they have to running it back. And I know no one wants to hear that, but I think they sold Norm on the fact that they had the fourth best net rating with him in the starting lineup, and it wasn't necessarily the starting lineup that was the problem. So I think I don't think Norm's decision is necessarily based on CJ staying or going. So I think they're comfortable whether they do trade CJ or not, having Norm be the starting 3 or the starting 2.
Yeah, big part of me is like, I don't even want to go down the path of discussing running it back right now. That's no fun. And, and that may be the case. I just feel like it's not going to hurt if you open up the shooting guard position, especially if there's a trade on the table for a guy who Norman Powell's won a championship with at the power forward position. You know what I mean? Like, that can only help. It might not help a ton, but, like, it should. I mean, we've so far done everything we can to maximize the chances that Norman Powell ends up returning in a Blazer uniform next year. We got rid of Terry Stotts. I think that was actually a bigger factor than some people want to admit. I think Norman Powell would much rather play under Chauncey Billups than Terry Stotts. I don't think Norman Powell enjoyed playing for Terry Stotts last year. And there's multiple guys that you could tell didn't really enjoy the way the team was coached, the way the system was offensively especially. I mean, Norman Powell kind of just got parked in the corner a lot of times. Wasn't really used as a cutter in the half court. The Blazers have never been a team that really runs, and he's a transition player, like really good in transition. So it's sort of a situation where we replaced the coach and got a coach he'd rather play for, okay? Now it's like if we ended up clearing the starting 2-guard position for him and getting a Pascal Siakam and then going to free agency and you're like, we'll match whatever offer you get from any of these other teams. Like, I don't see how he doesn't end up coming back. So, yeah,
O'Shea deserves some credit for like, that. We're not even messing around. We'll give you like 3 years, $75 million or something, and just be like, we value you that much that we're willing to not even wait around to see what other teams give you. Like, here's our offer. And also, like, I know people have an issue with Billups, but it's an absolute difference maker to have that guy go in a meeting with a free agent versus Terry Stotts. And I'm sorry, Stotts is a nice guy. Like, everyone respects him. But just the cachet that Billups talking to Norm, being like, hey, man, this is how I want to use you. I envision you being just as good as, like, Paul George in my offense, or, like, just milking that up and talking that up. I think absolutely Billups would have some influence with that. And I think he's going to be, I mean, maybe for the first time we'll get interviews or things with people that we normally wouldn't be able to talk to because we have someone like that as coach versus just a run-of-the-mill type coach like Stotts was.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. But in terms of free agency, that's not, signing a guy isn't really the, that's kind of the follow-up move, and it's for an ancillary piece. Like, going into this, I want us to trade CJ for the right piece, for a Pascal Siakam, maybe Tobias Harris as a fallback option. Like, I am not 100% on board the trade CJ bandwagon, but, like, I'm on board. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I haven't been before. Not that I wouldn't have been willing to trade CJ, but it was just like, I don't know, like for a Tobias Harris, I didn't want to make a lateral move. Now it's like I'd be okay with the lateral move just because positionally it just works out better for the Portland Trail Blazers. So it's sort of a situation where it's like, I don't want to run it back next year. Yeah, it would be cool to see like the difference that Chauncey could make, but I mean, I care less about like proving to people that, oh yeah, Chauncey can make a big difference with the same roster. Stotts was actually a problem. Like, yeah, you might be able to prove that Stotts wasn't doing as much as he could with this team, but I care less about that and more about the Portland Trail Blazers just being the best team possible. So it's like, fingers crossed, praying for Siakam. Obviously, if you follow me on Twitter, you know I really like Pascal Siakam because I toss out a 3-team trade idea every single day for him. And we could talk about a couple of those if y'all want in a little
bit. Is hated by Raptors fans, right?
Well, right. Raptors fans act like Siakam is 26-year-old LeBron. I mean, Raptor fans overvalue him so much. And I think Pascal's a really good player. You want to just talk about that 3-team trade I tossed out there? Because I kind of want your opinion on it.
Yeah, okay.
All right. So, I tossed out a 3-team trade today with Indiana, Toronto, and Portland. The 3-team trade I've talked about at length has been Philadelphia instead of Indiana, with Simmons going to Toronto, but with them drafting Scotty Barnes and how much the 76ers want back for Ben Simmons, I don't think that's a realistic option anymore. So, my trade had Portland sending CJ McCollum, Derrick Jones Jr., and 2 future firsts. They get back Pascal Siakam and TJ Warren. I'd even be willing to throw Nasir Little into this if it helped this deal happen. The Pacers traded Miles Turner and TJ Warren. They got back CJ McCollum and Chris Boucher. The Raptors traded away Siakam and Boucher. They got back Miles Turner, Derrick Jones Jr., and 2 future firsts. That was the trade idea I tossed out. A lot of Raptors fans were saying no, and I feel like that might not be enough value for them. What do you think of that trade, though?
I don't think it's quite enough for either of the other 2 teams. I like it for Portland, obviously, but yeah, I don't think Indiana's going to be like bending over to help us out. And I don't think Toronto's going to. Miles Turner is a good fit there, I guess.
That's not the right trade.
That's completely different.
Oh, I didn't save it on this computer. That was on my laptop. But okay, here's my.
I don't know if Indy would trade Miles Turner and and TJ Warren for CJ McCollum. I think
that's kind of the problem.
A lot more.
That's where. Here's the thing, though. Like, I could see Toronto being a team that really wants CJ. Okay, a team that we haven't really talked about as a potential CJ target because they need to raise their ceiling, right? And they need like an elite perimeter scorer that is also a guy that can play off of Sabonis. Offensively, in my opinion, CJ McCollum is like the best like available target on the market for the Indiana Pacers. Obviously, defensively, like that would be an issue, right? Trading away Miles Turner, getting back CJ McCollum, but like offensively, I mean, CJ goes there and probably averages 26, 27 points per game and 5 assists per game. I mean, per 36 last year, he averaged 24.5 points per game and 5 assists per game, and that was playing next to Damian Lillard. When CJ McCollum is the lead guard without Damian Lillard, I mean, I don't remember his stats exactly, but his stats are extremely impressive. So if he could be that guy and then also have a guy like Sabonis setting him up, this dude would be an absolute all-star in the Eastern Conference next year. I feel like he might not for sure make them better, but he would raise their ceiling, if that makes sense.
I think they'd be better off just trading like Miles Turner to Boston for Smart and then keeping TJ Warren. I think they get just defense just at a different position and keep the scorer in Warren. That's pretty similar to CJ, just plays a different position.
Doesn't raise their ceiling though. Does not raise their ceiling though.
I don't
think
CJ
problem.
Raises their ceiling either.
You don't think getting a guy that would probably be a 26, 27 point per game scorer efficiently next year, 5 assists per game, a guy that could create from the perimeter and play off Sabonis well would raise their ceiling?
No, because it hurts them really bad on defense. And
yeah, well,
I don't know.
That's the other like they would be a top 5 offense, maybe top 3 offense. Defensively, it'd be an issue. But like, here's the problem with the Indiana Pacers, and here's why I think they're a good CJ target. I think they need to trade Miles Turner, and that's a guy people will want. They got to slide Sabonis over to the center. They have to. They're playing 2 centers. Turner is not a guy that you want out-guarding perimeter fours, right? You want him protecting the rim. He averaged 3.4 blocks per game last year. Sabonis is not quick enough to deal with perimeter fours either. You want Sabonis playing the 5. That's why I really like Boucher for them in this deal as well. That's why I think he's an important throw-in, because he can go out there and guard fours and be kind of the power forward defensively, but he also has some rim protection ability to kind of help Domantas Sabonis out with Domantas Sabonis playing the 5. I think that is a much more cohesive fit defensively. Obviously, it's a downgrade going from Turner to Boucher, and I'm not saying they'd be better defensively at the 4 and 5. I just feel like, yes, you'd be downgrading defensive talent because Miles Turner is phenomenal defensively, but in terms of the fit defensively, Sabonis would be a better defender at the 5 than the 4, and Boucher would be a much better defensive fit next to him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just don't think that. I think that maybe moves them up like a couple seeds, but I don't think it gets them anywhere near any of those top seeds like the Bucks or the Nets or Philly and stuff like that. So
yeah, I mean, here's the thing though, is like you look at what CJ, or you look at what Atlanta did. if you have a guy like CJ and you have a guy like Sabonis, you can do what Atlanta did. You know what I mean? Like, I like that Indiana roster better. They would need to maybe trade a LeVert or trade a Brogdon and get better defensive players around them, but like they need to make a splash, and I think they need to trade Miles Turner or Domantas Sabonis, one of those guys. So I think that's like a sleeper team for CJ McCollum. You got Rick Carlisle there, who's used to having like a Luka Doncic there in Dallas. Obviously, Luka is head and shoulders above a CJ McCollum, but I think Carlisle's a guy who would want a CJ McCollum, wants like a lead guard creator that's a guy that can score, a guy that can play off Sabonis. Like, I think CJ's a really good fit next to Sabonis. You'd have to get better defensive pieces around that. So, and then TJ Warren, 20-point per game scorer, but injured a lot last year. And he's not a guy that provides the dynamic that CJ does on the perimeter. So that was my trade idea today. I feel like Indiana's a sleeper team for CJ. What do you think of that trade for Toronto, though? Trading Siakam and Boucher for Miles Turner and 2 firsts. I don't think it's enough value for them, but I don't think it's as crazy as some Raptor fans are acting like.
Yeah, I don't think it's as crazy as that, but I don't see them accepting that. It feels like they want... I don't know. In my opinion, it seems like despite drafting Scotty Barnes to possibly replace Siakam eventually, they feel like they're still possibly contenders if they put the right pieces around the rest of their team and just trade Siakam for the right parts.
They're losing Lowry, and they were not contenders last year.
I know. I'm just saying, from everything I've heard, they're not interested in rebuilding quite yet. I don't know if that's just like people hoping that that's the case, but from the trade rumors you and I have heard, it seems like they're looking for players like CJ and Nurk, and not look like we don't need a third team necessarily for those type of players.
That might make things easier, though.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
Because then, if they're not rebuilding,
CJ and a couple picks for Siakam straight up, and we don't have to worry about any other team. That's perfect.
Yeah, because they're gonna need like a lead guard. I mean, they got Van Vliet, so Van Vliet could probably start with Gary Trent Jr. But I think Van Vliet and CJ would actually be decent fits next to each other. Van Vliet's only 6'1", but he plays bigger than he is, and he's a good defensive player. And he's a guy that can play off the ball. What'd you say?
I feel so bad for Trent if that happened.
Yeah,
he's like, yes, I'm finally free of CJ. I got my own team. I'm starting next to Van Vliet next year, and like, nope, you're back to the bench behind CJ again.
Yeah, but like if they're trying to win, it doesn't mean they shouldn't trade Siakam because Scotty Barnes is good enough to start,
right?
And you want to give him a chance to step like if Scotty Barnes comes out shooting 35% from 3 next season, he has a legitimate chance of winning Rookie of the Year. Like he's legitimate in every single area except for his 3-point shot.
Yeah.
He's a lot like Siakam, actually. He reminds me of a more athletic Pascal Siakam. Like, I think you got to give him a starting spot. And if you lose Lowry, sure, you might get Dragic back in a sign and trade, but you got to go out and you got to, like, if you're trying to win, you got to get some more talent there at the guard positions.
It sounds
or a legitimate center. So that's why I thought Miles Turner might be a good option for him.
It sounds like the Siakam, them willing to or wanting to trade Siakam is more just a byproduct of what happened between him and the coach last year. They had a bit of a falling out, and I think it's just a case where they think they can get something to help them continue winning for him. But we've heard that, I mean, I don't know how accurate this is, but we've heard reports throughout the week from that Jake L. Fisher guy who's all of a sudden become Mr. Insider somehow. But that Portland and Toronto have been talking, and they were engaged in a trade involving both CJ and Siakam. Where I think the problem is, though, is that Toronto needs a center, and that's why your trade makes sense today with Miles Turner. That would be a guy that if they could probably somehow get out of this deal. But I think the holdup, if we're just talking about us trading with Toronto directly, which they probably would for CJ, but I think they're asking for Nurk, and we're not willing to include Nurk in that deal. So, because that then leaves a giant hole at our center position, and we don't want to re-sign Cantor to fill that. So, I think that's where the holdup is right now. So if they can find a third team with a center like you proposed today, I think that Toronto would be more willing to do that. I just think they need somehow to improve from their very bad acquisition of Aaron Baines last year.
Yeah. Who are some other potential targets in a 3-team trade where Toronto can get CJ as well as a center from a third team?
Well, I proposed this earlier today. Like, how many would New York include a Mitchell Robinson for CJ if they didn't have to give up many picks because of that?
Well, I was thinking CJ to Toronto and a center from a third team to Toronto as well.
Yeah. Or maybe you could send first to New York or something to get, I don't know. Mitchell Robinson's a weird case because he basically didn't play much last year, and they did really good without him. So do they really need him if they re-sign Noel? And maybe you could get him for a first or two just because. And the reason why I target him is because his contract's so low. It's like $1.8 million or something. Yeah. So that would be the type of guy. I mean, I would call Washington and see if they were dumb and wanted to include a Gafford in that. But just got to find a center somewhere. But I don't know. Toronto could also sign someone with their mid-level exception too. It's not like they can't get a center elsewhere. So I don't know if that would hold up a deal completely. But yeah.
Naz Reid could be a guy potentially, because he's a guy that can shoot threes and also protect the rim. And I feel like ideally you'd want a 3-and-D center next to Scotty Barnes at the 4.
Yeah,
that would probably be the most cohesive fit.
They could also go after like a Daniel Tice or something who would fit well with their systems and stuff.
Yeah,
like a free agency. Yeah,
I mean, they should have Goran Dragic as kind of a trade piece.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder, because Goran Dragic plus Siakam is $52 million. In their, why are they planning on taking back Dragic? Because otherwise they would have cap space, right?
I don't think they do unless they renounce Lowry, and I don't. But they'd be getting, if they get Precious, that helps them, right, in the front court. But yeah, I think they think they can flip Dragic again somewhere else.
Yeah,
but if they do, or they get Dragic, and then all of a sudden they don't need CJ as much as they thought initially. They were saying, no, we want CJ in a trade. And then it becomes, oh no, send him to New York, and then Mitchell Robinson comes here, and then we free up like $28 million in salary, right? With Siakam going out, and yeah.
I mean, I just don't feel like, because they're gonna have to re-sign Noel if they trade Robinson, and then at that point, do they still have cap space for CJ to absorb him in a trade? I feel like Mitchell Robinson is a bit more of a long shot.
Yeah,
I don't know. I hadn't even thought about him as a potential center to be on the market. So, New York is just hard to figure out what they're going to do, because it's like they got a little taste of playoffs and they get bounced by the Hawks. So they're like, oh, but we made the playoffs. We were the 4th seed. Let's go out and get a bunch of guys. So they could just pull off some stuff that people were just like, what in the world? Didn't expect that. So, I mean, anybody outside of RJ Barrett and Julius Randle, I feel like is available from them.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess Toppin could be that guy too. I don't know how much Toronto values him or whatever, but I think he would. I mean, not that he kind of came on at the end of last year, but maybe Toronto thinks they can get something out of him. But this kind of leads me back. You mentioned you don't know what New York's doing, so they're a huge wild card in all this, because we've heard all along that they're going to try to get like a lead guard or a playmaker or some sort of splash, right? They've been trying to do it for years, but they have the cap space this offseason. But they'll make a run at Chris Paul, but he'll resign in Phoenix most likely, and then will they be in play for Lowry, which makes no sense for them to go for someone that old. But they could do something stupid like that and throw a wrench in the whole Miami-Toronto thing. Yeah. But so a team like that is definitely one of the teams regarding Portland that you have to keep your eye on. And that's because as long as they don't sign anyone, their desperation grows. Same with New Orleans. If they don't get Lowry, and they also Dallas, those three teams in particular, Dallas, Miami, and New Orleans, are all said to be very high on Lowry. And Philadelphia, I think, you could throw that in there as well. So that's 4 teams. And then if New York comes in, that's 5 teams. So if he's signed and traded to Miami, I think that is good news for us, because you want to think of it in terms of CJ's trade value. Mm-hmm. And these teams that have cleared space to get a Kyle Lowry specifically, only one of them can get him. And if it's Miami, Miami's not a team we're even talking about, because they don't have the assets we need to trade CJ for. So it makes no sense for us to deal with Miami. So I think if he does get signed and traded to Miami, that is perfect for us, because that leaves the other teams all left maybe getting desperate. And then as other players start to sign, maybe they targeted Lowry first. That was their first interview and stuff. And then other players that they would have tried to go after sign elsewhere. And the more it gets later into that first day and into the second day, then they're like, oh crap, who's available? And instead of, oh, Portland, we'll just like lowball them for CJ because they seem desperate to trade him. Yeah. It becomes, oh crap, we better overpay to get CJ because he's like one of our last options right now as a lead guard if we want to fill out a roster, and otherwise we created all this space for nothing. And New York's been left holding the bag, every offseason since I can remember. So this is, in my opinion, people don't want to hear this, but it's smart to be patient and wait, because if things play out the way they're looking like it, Philly is going to panic because no one's going to match their offer on Simmons. It came out today that they're looking to trade Tobias Harris now too. So there's going to be an option. Worst case scenario, the CJ for Tobias swap seems like it'll be available at some point. So we just are in a position now where we wait and find out which team is willing to give up the most for him, and then we use those assets to get what we really want, if that's not what we really want from that team. And I think that's the smartest way to play for it. So if you see Lowry getting signed and traded to Miami, if you see Dallas and New Orleans in particular and not signing anyone big, and if you see New York not using up their cap space, and I think those are all, and as long as Siakam's not traded somewhere else, and as long as like Ben Simmons or Tobias Harris don't get traded anywhere else, I think those teams are going to get super desperate. And then you throw in a Boston Celtics who still don't have a point guard right now. So, I mean, you can say Smart could, I guess, play the point a little bit, but they don't have like a true lead guard on that team. So they could, all of a sudden, they're not going to be players in free agency, but in terms of if they're sitting there like us trying to make a trade for one of these guards and they don't get anyone either, the market for CJ is going to become much greater in a few days than it is right now, in my opinion. And I think this could be laying out perfectly for us to maximize his value. And if we don't have to give up much to get the player we get back, it also opens the door to do secondary trades as well.
Yeah. So here's the 2 things you want to see if you're a Blazer fan right away in free agency. You want to see, A, Norman Powell resigning.
Yep.
B, you want to see a Kyle Lowry sign and trade to Miami. To Miami for all the reasons that Eric laid out. So, I mean, yeah, that's the thing, is everybody say, oh, Neil would have made a trade by now if he wanted to.
Right.
It's just ridiculous. There's so many things that need to play out, and there's so many teams that are waiting to see how certain things play out. There's only been one meaningful player that's been traded, and that wasn't a guy the Blazers would have ever had any interest in Russell Westbrook. So I don't understand the people that seem like they want to kind of be angsty right now, saying, oh, Neil hasn't made a trade yet. What in the world? Like, nobody's made a trade yet. Nobody outside of the Lakers, man. And that, I don't think that was a good trade for them. And we can talk about that later. But it's just a situation where it's like, just wait and see how things play out. Because it could be a situation where you're Neil Olshey and you're hoping that you can flip the tables, as you said, from teams thinking you're desperate to all of a sudden, oh, there's multiple teams that want CJ McCollum. Well, now it's not a situation where they have anywhere near as much leverage as they did before.
And get into a bidding war.
Exactly. So that's the hope if you're Portland. Who knows how that ends up. I mean, you could see, I wouldn't be shocked if Dallas goes hard after a CJ McCollum. And maybe, I mean, I'm just speculating here, but maybe Toronto would be interested in Porzingis and a couple picks for Siakam, because Porzingis could hypothetically play the 5 and be a stretch 5 and it would allow Scotty Barnes to start at the 4. I mean, Toronto might not have any interest in Kristaps Porzingis. I have no idea. That's just random speculation. But that's an example of, like, maybe something that we haven't talked about, which is Dallas is the third team in that trade. You know what I mean? Like, idealistically for Portland, you end up trading CJ for Siakam. The problem is like, if Toronto is sitting there like, the only way we're dealing Siakam to you straight up is if we get CJ McCollum and Jusuf Nurkic, then you're put in a tough position if you're Portland, because I wouldn't do that trade. You want Siakam and Nurkic at the 4 and the 5 next season. You would essentially have to maximize value for CJ McCollum to a third team in that scenario. So that's the thing where you gotta sit and wait for things to develop. But those two things, if they happen at the start of free agency, Norman Powell resigning and Kyle Lowry to Miami in a sign and trade for Dragic, I'm happy, and I'm optimistic, and I'm feeling good.
But here's the third part. Chicago going after Lonzo Ball is the rumor. So that leaves New Orleans. Not only did they clear up space, but they lose Lonzo Ball possibly, and they lose Lowry. I mean, I know they can still match, but I don't know if they're going to be willing to match what I think Lonzo Ball is going to be getting. And so they could be striking out or matching a huge contract, but then the Chicago to even make that offer sheet has to dump salary. And they have two guys with partially guaranteed contracts, a Thomas Satoransky and a Thaddeus Young. If they're just looking for a team to dump those salaries and they're not needing anything back or maybe a future second or something, those are two guys that can absolutely help your bench. So if you do make a trade for a Siakam or something, if you throw in CJ and Derek Jones, I think the contracts come close to matching for getting at least one, if not both of those guys in the trade. It's close. Yeah. So you could possibly get them to give up those two contracts so they can have enough money to sign Lonzo Ball, and you basically filled out your bench and got a starting level power forward, and that would be an amazing trade in my opinion, just to get guys like that added on. Look for teams that are looking to clear space and pick up and get a guy that might have cost you a first round pick in Thaddeus Young that all of a sudden you're getting for free because they're just trying to give him away.
Yeah, I have the number for you. If Portland trades out CJ McCollum and Derek Jones Jr., and they're taking back Pascal Siakam, they can take an additional approximately $17.5 million. So that'd be more than enough to be able to bring in a Thaddeus Young.
Thaddeus Young, yeah. Not both, but yeah.
Yeah, and because Thomas Satoransky makes $10 million, Thad Young next season is making about $13.5. Here's another something interesting if the sign and trade with Toronto happens. Portland could trade CJ McCollum, Derek Jones Jr., and CJ Ellaby, and that would barely match Siakam and Goran Dragic. In that trade, Toronto would get a $19.4 million traded player exception. Because Siakam matches CJ McCollum and Derek Jones Jr., and they have a trade player exception to take on CJ Ellaby. So they would take care of all their incoming salary without even needing to include Goran Dragic, so they would automatically get a $19.4 million traded player exception for Goran Dragic. So that could be a way Portland provides more value for Toronto, because you could potentially use that trade player exception to sign and trade for a player. All of a sudden, that would essentially be $19 million in free agent money that they could go out and offer players and, hope that they could swing a sign and trade using that traded player exception to acquire whoever they traded for. So that could also be an option that's on the table.
Yep. And then, also, you find a team that wants a Goran Dragic too. whether it's New Orleans if they lose Ballin out on Lowry, or Dallas play with his fellow countryman Luka Doncic, maybe make them happy. So you find that, and then you maybe get some other assets there. Maybe you have Dwight Powell and Maxi Kleber go to another team, and you just keep making trades until you get what you want. And I like that idea.
Here's the thing, Eric. There's too many options on the table, hypothetically, where if we run it back next year, I will be anti-Olshey. I know we've said it. We're cool with running it back, and I know you're cool with running it back, but it's just like, if we run it back next year, I have no belief that Olshey knows how to be creative enough in order to pull something that gets us over the top. Mm-hmm. This offseason is my litmus test, and I wouldn't be as enraged if we brought back CJ and brought back Norman Powell as some other people in the fan base, but I would be in the anti-Olshey camp. Now he has the pressure on him. He has, I think, the permission from Dame to finally trade CJ. He has some creative things he could do out there. Like, I mean, Siakam is available and he's the perfect guy. I mean, if he gets Siakam, I am pro-Olshey. Okay? Even if he trades 2 seconds with CJ, if he goes out and gets Siakam and then rounds out the roster like solidly and brings back Norman Powell, like he gets a passing grade, and I'm like, okay, he finally trades CJ. For everybody that said he's never going to trade CJ, there you go. He got the forward y'all wanted. He also got a replacement in the past year that he was able to bring back in free agency for CJ. He also got Robert Covington, who everybody said they wanted in the past. I mean, like, that's the make or break. A Siakam trade at this point for me is just a make or break deal, and it might not be easy enough to get it in a straight up deal if Toronto wants Nurkic as well, which I could see that being the case. But there's other teams out there that could end up in a bidding war for CJ McCollum, and Olshey might have to work a little bit to cultivate that, but that's part of what goes into being a GM, is maximizing value for assets and turning that into something else. So Siakam or bust for me at this point.
So Brandon Sims is saying it won't matter because we need 2 more stars because everyone is so stacked. I don't agree with that. I think Dame, Norm, Siakam, Nurk, I think that's a good enough starting lineup.
Milwaukee only had 2 stars this year. Like, I know people say Drew Holiday, but like Nurkic, like what I think Nurkic is going to be next year will be equivalent to what Drew Holiday was the third piece from Milwaukee. Milwaukee only had 2 stars.
That, but we have like Rocco and players that they don't have. Norm is better than
I'm a big
anyone other than their top 3. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you also got Powell. Yeah, like, I mean, how many stars did Phoenix have, Eric? They had 2 stars.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't need 3 stars in order to win a championship.
We could still do a follow-up move. We'd still have contracts to trade out depending on what we give up for Siakam. But it is possible we could still get a Jeremy Grant or someone like that making around 28 million, somewhere in that range, if we combine other salary. But I don't know what you expect. I mean, you can't just wave a magic wand and get 2 stars here. It's not that easy. As much as we can come up with ideas to do it, it just does. It's hard to do it.
Yeah. But what qualifies as a 3rd star? If you have a Norman Powell averaging an efficient 19 points per game, is that like close enough to start? You know what I mean? Like, is it really that big of a difference going out and getting somebody as the 3rd scorer who can average 23, 24 points per game compared to Powell at 19 points per game, and then that extra 3-4 points per game you make up with having good role players beyond that, and maybe an Anthony Simons that looks good in Chauncey Billups' system, and maybe Nasir Little has a breakout season. Like, you can make up for that slight differential in the 3rd star. You know what I mean? Because here's the thing. Your main guy, the difference between like a superstar and a fringe all-star for your number 1 guy is huge. The difference between a superstar and a fringe all-star for your number 3 guy isn't as big because you don't need, like, you need a superstar to win in the NBA. There's diminishing returns, right? There's diminishing returns. Like, if you have 7 superstars, having an 8th guy who's a superstar or fringe all-star isn't going to make a difference. So
Right.
there's diminishing returns on that. So in terms of
Plus,
needing a 3rd star for sure, a guy who's been an all-star, I think Norman Powell is good enough to be the 3rd best player on a championship team. I think if Nurkic figures things out and works in Chauncey's system, which I think he will, I think he's good enough to be the 3rd best player on a championship team. So I'm not really
and one of those guys
would
be 4th if they both work out. So.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's what it comes down to for me. I mean, I don't think, I think Siakam and then rounding out the rest of the roster correctly will make us maybe not the favorite in the West, but close enough that we have a chance.
Yeah, and if you somehow got creative and got Dragic with Siakam, that gives us all kinds of trade possibilities, especially if we only gave up 2 firsts in that trade. We'd still be able to possibly trade a future first still, attach that to a Goran Dragic and get, you might be able to somehow get a Harrison Barnes or a Jeremy Grant or someone like that. I mean, it's not, Harrison Barnes wouldn't be flashy or anything, but you put him as your 5th or 6th best player, and all of a sudden that's a really good lineup, and so yeah, I don't think we'd have to trade for 3 stars. And just for the record, we still have Simons and Nas who could take a giant step next year under Billups. If we re-sign Collins, which I guess we should talk about, he's still a guy, if healthy, that could absolutely be the 5th or 6th best guy on a team as well. And so, yeah, we still have Rocco too, who's
yeah, I don't think Rocco hasn't been in any Siakam proposals.
Yeah,
unless I don't think so.
So not only, I mean, Rocco's not a star, but in terms of role players, I mean, he's about as good as they come in the league in terms of knowing their role, knowing how to play defense, at least off ball, and knocking down the threes, which he was 38, 39% for us last year. So he's an elite 3-and-D guy who will help us win games. So, I mean, that's not a situation where we have to get as many starters as possible. I completely agree with you on that.
Yeah,
and
I tried to go ahead.
I know a lot of people want Kawhi, but that ship has pretty much sailed. I think the only way it would have worked is if we would have gotten him to want to come here. And if he wanted to come here, I think his best option would have been to opt into his contract, but tell them that he's only doing so to get traded here, a la Chris Paul from the Clippers to the Rockets. And now that he opted out, we'd have to sign and trade for him. And I just don't see how we could absorb $40 million without completely decimating the rest of the team. I mean, I know it's possible. We could still do it if he wanted to get here. And I know he's saying he's going to at least be open to talking to other teams. So I would definitely contact him and see if he's interested in coming, because he's the type of player who, if he did want to come here, you do everything you can to make that happen. But it's just going to be very difficult. And to gut the roster and to cut all that salary, and then on top of that, not have him on the roster most of next year, that's going to put us in a pretty tough position. So I don't think getting him and Siakam, who's also out for 2 months, I don't think that necessarily makes us better than just not trading for one of them and just having a better roster around 2 of those guys.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about Zach Collins right now?
Yeah, let's talk about Zach.
All right, so they didn't give him his qualifying offer. So he's an unrestricted free agent, which means he can sign with anybody, and we do not have the rights to match that contract they offer him and keep him. So he's just like a normal free agent. It's not like a situation like a Gary Trent Jr., who's a restricted free agent. So if we, had a bunch of cap space, we could go out and offer Gary Trent Jr. $20 million a year for 4 years if we wanted. And Toronto could decide to match that and keep him on their team for that contract. That's how restricted free agency works. You have to offer players qualifying offers. Zach's, I believe, was $7 million, correct?
Yeah, it was a little over $7 million.
Yeah, and that makes them a restricted free agent. Zach Collins at any time could accept that qualifying offer and return to the Portland Trail Blazers if we had offered that, and he would return on a 1-year, $7 million contract, or he could sign an offer sheet with another team, and then we would have the rights to match, or if we declined the right to match, he would be signed by that other team for that offer sheet. So We didn't make him a restricted free agent. He's a normal free agent, can sign with whoever he wants, and that's not a surprise. It was reported a while ago. It just became official today. That doesn't mean he's gone, though. Absolutely does not mean that Zach Collins is not going to be a Portland Trailblazer next year. It would be almost guaranteed if we had offered him the qualifying offer that he would have become a free agent next season, but it doesn't mean that he's gone. I see a lot of people saying, like, sayonara to Zach Collins, like, goodbye. There's still a realistic chance he returns. Eric, what would you say the chances that Zach Collins resigns with the Portland Trailblazers is?
I want it to be above 50%, but right now I'm going to say about 30.
Yeah, I think about 40.
Yeah.
I think about 40%. What if Zach Collins returns, how could you see that going down, the situation, what type of contract he'd get, etc.?
So quick, I seem to get a lot of information from him, but so I heard him speak about it, and he was a little off because he thought not offering the qualifying offer meant we'd lose him for sure, and that we couldn't offer him more than a minimum unless we used our tax mid-level, which isn't true. So we
have his bird rights.
We could offer him up to a maximum contract still, if we really wanted to. So I think that is the only reason why I'll hesitate, along with the fact that I just don't see Olshey after everything he gave up to get him and for thinking he was going to be like a franchise pillar. And the only reason he didn't get to see that play out, whether that would have happened or not, is because of injuries. I don't see giving up on a player that easily. And I understand not offering like $7 million, that's fine. But I'd be surprised if we didn't at least offer him. But we've seen this situation with a Jake Layman, a Pat Connaughton. I'm not saying Zach is down at that level, but guys who became free agents and we were just kind of like, okay, see ya. Like, we didn't even try to re-sign those guys. Which it may or may not have been the right decision. But, like, I just think it kind of seems like it's headed towards that route by not accepting it. It's just kind of like, okay, well, we tried and you kept getting hurt, and I'm sorry, but we just can't invest any more in you, and we got to worry about right now. And so I think that is a definite possibility that Olshey is just going to not even try and let him walk. But I still find that hard to believe because, that's the thing. Oh, Olshey will never give up his draft picks. That's his guy. There's no way he's ever going to trade him, right? So, yeah, I know, Trevin, we technically signed and traded Layman. I know that we didn't get anything in return. But so Quick is actually really close with Zach, I guess. He said he would really miss him if he left. And so Zach's expecting to get offers in the $5 million range. And so Quick thought that meant he was gone because we weren't going to use our tax mid-level on him, But I think I would be comfortable with a 2 or 3 year deal with whether it be a team option or if Zach will only sign if it's a player option, I'm fine with that too. 2 years, $10 million, $5 million a year. I think that would be solid value. I think that's about where I would offer him. If he gets like a big offer, like 3 years, $24 million or something, I wouldn't have a problem if they offered him the same contract. I also wouldn't have a problem if they let him walk, just knowing that they can't really afford to put that much money on someone who they can't depend on. But I just really hope Zach's going to be back because I think it would be a mistake to let him walk for $5 million and to not even care about it,
Yeah, I mean, here's why it's okay if we bring him back. Since we have his bird rights, it's not like we'd have to use the MLE to sign him. It's not like we have cap space and we're going to use up some of our cap space that we could use on other guys to sign him. Like, the money that we spend on Zach, we can't use elsewhere. Like, the only way it might change things is, if Norman Powell leaves. Okay, then we would likely have the full mid-level exception, which would hard cap us at $143 million if we used it. So obviously, maybe Zach pushes us over that amount. So maybe you don't bring him back because you want the full mid-level exception. But if Norman Powell resigns, we'll only have the taxpayer mid-level exception, which you have no matter what. So whatever we used on Zach Collins, we're not going to be able to use elsewhere. So why not spend $5 million, even $6 million next year? Like if it's a 1-year contract, we're not going to use that $5 or $6 million anywhere else. If he doesn't play, it doesn't hurt us, since we didn't risk anything by giving him money that we can't use anywhere else. We were like, what's the risk there? There's none. Okay. If he ends up playing, then he's a good role player, a 3-and-D stretch 5 that can also play some 4, that can guard a little bit on the perimeter, and he's a really good role player in that situation, right? So the reward far outweighs the risk of spending some money on him that we couldn't use elsewhere. Now, as you get into maybe a more longer-term deal, then maybe that's a situation where you're not sure how it's going to affect our flexibility and our ability to make moves in future years, so you might not want to offer him $5-6 million a year for 2 or 3 years, but still, at that point, that's still not that much money when you really consider it. And also, I mean, it was reported that the first 2 surgeons botched the surgery. Like, there's no reason he should have had the same re-injury twice in a row. So if they get it right, it's not a situation where I think that he's doomed to be injury prone, right? Like as long as he is able to finally fully recover from this injury, it doesn't automatically mean he's going to be injury prone. He's only had 2 injuries in his career, and that was the shoulder dislocation on a freak play, and that was this ankle issue.
So yeah, I have some insight on what happened with the surgeries. So the team wanted him to use a specific doctor. Zach and his agent chose to use their own doctor. And like you said, they had the surgery, they thought it was going well, and then he rebroke it or whatever. Zach then chose to go back to the same doctor anyway, despite the team not wanting him to go to a different doctor. And so things were going well. And this might influence whether they want him back or not. Maybe they're frustrated with him that they didn't just listen to them from the beginning or whatever. But they went to the third...
he's paid the price, though.
Right. So the third injury happens, the third break of the foot. So finally he goes to a different doctor. A different doctor performs the surgery. Was completely baffled as to what the first doctor did in both surgeries. Did it in a different way. Different type of surgery, I guess. And Zach, within a couple weeks, was saying he felt better than he did after months of recovery from the first 2 surgeries. He feels like he's ready to go right now. And
which isn't the case. But
he's not ready to go, but he feels like he's ready to play on it. Whereas he was still in a walking boot or not even cleared to walk around normally for a couple months after those first couple surgeries. So I mean, who knows? That could just be talk. It could just be in his head. But I think they got it right this time. And this is not exclusive. This is, this is something I read in an article. So I think, it isn't necessarily Zach's fault because he's just following he's got an agent and he's got to get advice from him and do what's best for him. And he thought it was different. I mean, he's a young guy. How is he supposed to know that his doctor would mess it up? But this is the case of, 2 years into his deal, you had a video, right, comparing him to a possible third-year breakout like a Pascal Siakam, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't
a lot. Let me just you gotta bring that up.
Yeah.
I wasn't saying he plays like Pascal Siakam, which was a lot of people
Everyone took it that way.
misinterpreted it.
Yeah.
But statistically, his statistical profile was pretty similar to a Siakam. Obviously, Siakam has more upside as a ball handling big, but
right.
a lot of players break out in their third season. I thought he was bound to have a breakout in his third year.
And he earned the starting spot. We were 2-1 before he, got hurt, and then I think we finished 9-3 that season with him as the starter in a season where we were well below 500 otherwise. And I know you can say, well, he didn't really contribute to that much of that happening, but he's the kind of player who helps you win games, in my opinion. And I just think he's not gonna. I don't think he'll ever be an all-star. He's not gonna average enough points or whatever. But you need guys like that who are tough and do all the little things and who are in the right spots on defense and who can just like, I don't know. We don't have any kind of guys. I mean, Nurk's kind of like this, but Zach was on a little bit different level, just like getting in people's heads and talking trash on the court and stuff like that. And so I think, I don't know. I think it would be a huge mistake. I think that's one of those situations where we'll really regret watching him blossom and just if he's healthy on another team. But
then everybody was saying, "Oh, Shea never gave him up," and the same people that giving him crap for drafting him in the first place.
But like, if we re-sign him and he gets hurt again, then everyone will say the same thing about Shea. So
I mean, yeah. So it's just like. And that's the thing. He could get hurt again. He might be injury prone. Like, I'm not saying he isn't or anything. Right. I'm just saying the reward outweighs the risk.
Mm-hmm.
The reward outweighs the risk. Like, what are you really risking?
Yeah.
A roster spot that you're going to use on some mediocre scrub who should never play, the next Mario Hezonja or Anthony Tolliver?
The last 2 years we've had injuries and we've only had 14 roster spots filled. So we can just, use that spot. And we signed... we don't know if Greg Brown's going to be on the roster or a two-way, but we signed Watford on a two-way, and they're keeping the same rules this year except for the playoffs. So while Collins is down, Watford can be active for any games that we need him to be, and he can be with the team the entire season. We don't have a G League team, so it's probably better for him to just practice with the team every day, right? And so we've been fine, even with tons of injuries the past 2 years. Even so, I think maybe you just have to have a 15th man on your team this year instead of 14, like we've been doing. But the other news from that same thing, so Quick flat out said they're going into the tax this year, and they're going deep in the tax. So he confirmed that that's been their plan all along, and that they are going to be a tax team and that they are willing to pay whatever it takes to make this team good. And I know that's going to go against what everyone's saying. And if we don't keep Norm, I guess it doesn't matter because it'd be pretty hard for us to get into the tax too far anyway. But, I think you just keep him. If Jody is willing to pay the tax, then what does it matter what you pay him? I mean, you could pay him, give him the Myers-Leonard contract for all I care if she's willing to pay – that much more in tax. I mean, it doesn't really matter. So we're not hard capped in that situation. So, I mean, I would do that. And then you have the worst case scenario, you have a $5 to $10 million contract to trade out if things don't go well. So that's what I would do. I think he's a good enough player to take that risk still. But obviously it sucks knowing that he's out for a while, even if we trade for a Siakam too, who's also out for a while. Might have a little bit of depth issues at the beginning of the year, but I think it's worth it.
I mean, here's the thing, though, is if you trade for Siakam, you start Nas at the 3 and see if he can break out in the first 2 months.
Yep.
It could be a blessing in disguise because it could make us better for the long run if Nas, given that role and given that leash, that responsibility, playing an offensive system that's better, he might break out those first 2 months and really showcase what he is. And maybe that raises his value for a deadline trade where we can get that third star. Or he, has the confidence where once he gets the bench role, he's going from playing against starters and potentially playing well to playing against bench players and having a ton of confidence. So, I mean, you start Rocco at the 4 and Nas at the 3 in that situation. Simons is your most likely, you bring back Powell. Simons is your backup guard, and you just have a 3-guard rotation there. Yeah, you would need a backup 3. Derrick Jones Jr. opted in. Maybe you trade him for another forward. I don't know. That's the thing is, like, even if Siakam misses time, I think we'll be completely fine. It could be a blessing in disguise long-term for Nasir Little and his value to other teams and his value to us.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, like, that's the thing is with every single move, you got to factor in risk versus reward. CJ trades are far less risky because of the situation the team is in, the situation that the pressure that Dame's putting on the team and what is out there. You know what I mean? And it's also far less risky because now we have Norman Powell, who I trust to be the starting 2. I didn't fully trust Gary Trent Jr. to be the starting 2.
Right.
So, I mean,
I kind of trust him. He was fine. It's just in Stott's system, I don't think this team was ever going to be good enough defensively, no matter who the starting 2 was.
Yeah.
And so I think scheme wise, it makes it different. Not knowing what the schemes will be.
Yeah, but like Norman Powell's better than Gary Trent Jr.
Absolutely.
Just flat out simple.
Yeah.
Like a CJ trade is far less risky. That's my point.
Right. Yeah.
With every move, you have to weigh risk versus reward. And with Zach Collins, I feel like a lot of people are thinking emotionally, where they're pissed off that we picked him, where they're frustrated with his injury issues, and they simply are just like, just get him out of here, screw him, screw O'Shea for taking him, let him walk. But it's like, you got to look at the situation with the surgeries, it's the same re-injury. He re-injured it twice in a row after getting the first injury. Mm-hmm. You're using money that you can't spend elsewhere. Like, the risk is so extremely low just bringing him back. Mm-hmm. Like, if worse comes to worse, he's salary that we can toss into a trade. Instead of having a minimum guy who only counts as like $1.6 million in a trade, he's salary that we can use to match in a trade, and he's making cheap enough money and is still young enough where he likely wouldn't be a pure negative value. Like, maybe he's slightly negative, but if he helps facilitate a bigger trade, a team isn't going to look at him and like, no, I don't want to do this trade because he's in it.
Yeah.
So that's the thing, is the risk versus reward, it makes sense to bring him back. 1,000%.
So the wild card then becomes, if we want to bring him back, does he want to be back? Because now that we didn't offer the qualifying offer, I'm hoping this is another thing, because if we sign him right away or within a few hours of free agency opening, then you can pretty much assume that we didn't offer him the qualifying offer because we had kind of an agreement in place at a little bit less of a contract, but maybe for 2 years instead of 1 or something like that. But if Zach is kind of frustrated that he didn't get the qualifying offer, or with the way maybe some of the things went down, maybe he pulls a Kawhi Leonard and hates our medical staff or something, and that's the reason why he chose his own doctor. I know. But the fact that the new surgery went well, I think that might swing it back in his favor. But the wild card is that Zach could just go ignore all that and be like, no, I'm out of here. I'm going to go to a team, a different team. I just want to be in a different situation. And he could go to another team. I hope that's not the case. I hope he wants to be back. This is a guy who was our starting 4, and people forget that. Like, he had earned a starting spot. He was supposed to be a project. Like, no one even expected anything in his first couple of years in the league, and this guy played well enough to feel comfortable letting Aminu and Harkless walk so he could be the starting 4-man. And it was just a shame that he had never been hurt the first 2 seasons, and then all of a sudden he's hurt the next 2. So I think it's a case of, I hope he respects the fact that he not only was given a chance here, but also, like, we were patient with him and gave him a starting spot, which he could still reclaim eventually if he ever got healthy. So I think that it would just be good for him. And I really think he's better on a good team versus going to a rebuilding team where he's just, he could pull a John Collins his first year or whatever and get 15 shots a game and maybe get his average up, but like, I just don't see him as that type of player. I don't think he really cares about that kind of stuff. So
so we'll wait and see on what happens with him. What else do we
so people are asking about Melo in the chat.
Let me handle this. I don't want Melo back. Okay. I don't want Melo back. I want role players that can, like, I want role players that can play both sides of the floor or be, like, really good on one side of the floor. Mm-hmm. And Carmelo Anthony is not really good offensively. He'll have moments where he's really good offensively. The problem is they're just moments. Yeah. He is a three-point specialist who doesn't do anything else well at this point in his career. And people argue this, like, man, if you give him the ball in the post, he could still, like, have games where he just goes off in the post. Like, yeah, maybe one game out of every 4 or 5, but he shot 43% from 2 last year. That's extremely inefficient. Maybe under Chauncey Billups, maybe he's better in that regard, but he is not good enough defensively for me to want him back. Like, I want better ball movement. I don't think he helps us with that. I don't think he's as selfish as people say, and he can make the right pass, but most of the situations where he's going to make the right pass is when he's facing up or posting up 15 feet away and just sitting there waiting for something to happen. And then if that's not there, he's definitely going to shoot. Like, I don't know. He's also... How old is he now? He's also 37.
Yeah.
So you should expect him to decline next year. You should expect him to be worse next year than he was this past season. And he had a career 3-point shooting season. He shot a career high 40.9%. I don't know, like, he was shooting better 3-point attempts than he used to. Like, he used to shoot a bunch of contested attempts off the dribble and whatnot, but it's like, that's really the only thing giving him value. I don't know, man. Like, I don't want him back. I feel like we can go out and get a better target, or I'd rather have, like, Derrick Jones Jr. as the backup for. A guy that can play in transition. A guy that, if he's used properly as a cutter, he can be a legitimate threat, a lob target. A guy that plays defense. Like, I just am not... I don't want Melo or Kanter back next year. I want better defensive players, and both those guys are just so rough defensively. I just don't want either of them back.
Yeah, Trevor Williams does bring up a good point. He says if Melo returns, it'll be because Dame wants him to return. And that's the factor that we have to recognize, is that if Dame likes him and Dame wants him back, then he should be back.
I think Dame is over, like, the buddy, like, oh, I really respect Melo as a player. I like him. Like, I don't think that outweighs, like, I mean, dude, I like, Dame wants to win. You know what I mean?
Right, but if he's not, if because I mentioned this in my, cap breakdown. So the only reason why Kanter and Melo, if one or either of them are back, is because it's the same situation that we talked about with Zach. We can sign them to a decent-sized contract without it affecting our tax mid-level. So you just have to weigh whether you can get someone at the minimum that's better than those players, or, if you make a big trade and get multiple pieces. So
here's the thing, though. If we bring back Norman Powell, we have 8 of 9 rotation spots filled.
Yeah.
And we should have a 9-man rotation next year. You have Dame, Norm, Rocco, Nurkic, and then CJ or whoever you trade CJ for. And then you have Simons, Little, Derrick Jones Jr., that's 8 of 9. Right? Maybe you include Derrick Jones Jr. in a CJ trade and then you only have 7, 9, whatever. But, like, presumably you have 8 of 9 spots filled as long as you bring back Norman Powell. Then you have the mid-level exception to fill out that 9th spot. So I don't think it's a situation where, like, we need to bring him back.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think in a different system that was predicated on ball movement and not just straight ISOs, I think Melo would be okay. He's more okay for me bringing back than Kanter. But, yeah, I don't know. It's just, it'd be nice not to have to deal with either of those situations next year. But, I mean, I wouldn't be, like, mad if they brought Melo back. If they bring Kanter back, I mean, it's basically just because he's a good guy. Yeah, I don't want that reason. But if either of them come back, I want it to be known, if you're going to re-sign with us, you are not guaranteed to play. You could be the third string power forward or the third string center in Kanter's case. And
Melo ain't coming here for that.
Right. So if they need a promise or any sort of playing time, or I need this many touches in the post per game, straight ISOs, if either of them say that as a condition of them resigning, I'd be like, I'm sorry, I cannot promise you that. This is my offer. It might be that you're just an insurance policy at the end of our bench until people get healthy. But, I wouldn't do any kind of promises this year. I guess I wouldn't really have a huge problem, especially if we trade a bunch of players out, and don't have a lot of depth, and we're talking about those two guys resigning or minimum contract guys to fill out the roster, I guess I wouldn't have a problem. But yeah, it's
I just don't see a situation where we like trade 4 rotation players and only get 1 back.
Yeah.
You know, so
well,
I mean,
we have to include like Ants or Nas in your trade, so you know what I mean. Like, and we're only getting 1 player back, and we're sending out 3 or something. You know, it's like there could be some situations where we have to do that. I mean, I hope we're not.
Here's the thing, though.
Uncreative, but
the only way you're tossing Derrick Jones Jr. into a CJ trade is if you're likely getting a second rotation player back.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, otherwise, why even toss in that salary?
Right.
So I have a hard time seeing like a 3-for-1 where you also throw in Simons and whatnot.
That makes sense for you, but if we gave up or if we passed up getting a top 4 pick in this draft too, that like because we were not
here's the thing.
To figure out that stuff, you know, like
I don't even know if I believe that. Number one, number two.
I know. I'm just saying.
Like, any hypothetical is hypothetically possible. Right? I'm just going based off of, like, what I think is realistic. Like, I don't realistically see us trading,
Yeah, like...
I just don't think that's likely at all to even consider it.
If we did send out CJ and DJ as our 2 players, I think we can, accept... you said 17 million, right? We could...
17 million on top of Siakam.
Yeah, so we could throw in... like I said, Thaddeus Young, and that's a huge upgrade over Melo. That's a huge upgrade over Melo at the backup 4. Might not be the scorer Melo is or how the gravity Melo is, but defensively, both sides of the ball and playmaking, and you know all that kind of stuff. He'd be nice. So, it's like, if we do stuff like that, then absolutely it doesn't make sense to bring Melo back. But the other stuff I think is, I don't know if we, because I could see him just re-signing both those guys and running it back and then just getting a tax with them too in the running back scenario.
I mean, but like we like in that scenario, as long as we bring Powell back, we already have 8 to 9 spots filled, and then the taxpayer mid-level something would be the 9th spot. So it just comes down to this. I don't think there's a realistic situation. There's a situation that's possible where I could say like, okay, I guess we have to bring him back because we have too many spots to fill. But I just don't see that as a likely enough hypothetical for me to even like worry about that. Well, like I'm just going based off what I think is realistic, and I realistically don't see a situation happening where I would want him back.
The thing is, though, I mean, when Derrick Jones signed and we traded for Rocco, we were kind of surprised that Melo re-signed for the minimum last year. So, yes, I don't know. It might be a case where they value him a lot more in the locker room and stuff than we feel like he deserves. Real quick.
But the locker room was...
Oh, go ahead.
No, what was the locker room last year?
I know. Right.
At some point, like, you got Dame, who's supposedly a great leader. You got Chauncey, who everybody respects. Like, do we really need Carmelo to hold together the locker room that was pretty messed up, seemingly, last year? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't think Melo even necessarily contributes positively to the locker room. Like, he can be a vet, but on the court, he's a guy that is a ball stopper and doesn't play much defense. Like, if you go out and get a guy who maybe isn't the vet mentor that Melo is, but like a guy who come in there and bust his behind, I don't know, a Torrey Craig or a guy in that mold, that's going to be better for the morale of everybody, in my opinion. So I'm not even suggesting that we go after a Torrey Craig. I'm just saying, like, you get guys that fight and battle, and, you know, it's not all about them, and they're not a ball stopper offensively, and they play some defense. Like, I think that's better for the morale of everybody, and you have enough, like, you have enough leaders in the locker room with Chauncey and with Dame, you're going to be fine. You don't need Melo in that regard, in my opinion. So.
Yeah. So for the people mentioning Duncan Robinson in chat, we have no chance. No chance.
No, yeah.
He's a restricted
He's not signing
free
for
agent.
$6 million.
Yeah, we have $5.9 million to offer.
Yeah.
So we cannot. So stop spamming Duncan Robinson in chat. Like, it's not possible.
Yeah. Duncan Robinson not possible.
Especially since they're
somebody brought up Isaiah Thomas, bro. No, no to Isaiah Thomas.
Duncan Robinson is if he happened to sign the tax mid-level exception with us, Miami would thank us for signing just such a cheap offer for them to match.
Yeah, he's getting double digits. Yeah, even if we had the full mid-level exception, we ain't getting him.
Yep.
So yeah, but I don't. Yeah, I don't know. I don't want Melo back because I want better guys than him. You know what I mean? Like, I want us to have a good enough offseason where we don't have to bring back.
Let's finish off the minimum guys. So we have Giles, Rondae, Hollis, Jefferson. Am I missing anyone?
No.
Is it just those two?
I mean, I don't want any of those guys in the rotation next year.
Yeah.
Is insurance policy maybe is like a 12th man, 13th man?
Yeah.
Sure. Like, I mean, we're going to have to fill out our roster somehow. As a rotation piece, no.
I mean, I guess Blevins and Leaf, yeah, I don't think those are worth mentioning.
Yeah, no, they're not. I mean, I don't want those guys on two ways.
I mean, if we have to fill out the roster and it's Hollis, Jefferson, or Giles, I have no problem with them being our, 12th, 13th guys on the roster, 11th, 12th guys. But yeah, I'm so happy we got a legit two-way contract. I mean, even if it's not even if he doesn't pan out, I'm just glad they took a shot at a decently, someone who has some skills that could maybe translate to the NBA and be on a two-way, and not someone who's just a complete waste of a space.
I'm finally excited about a two-way contract, man. Yeah. It's weird. Because who did we have before? CJ Wilcox was the first guy we ever signed to a two-way. I mean, we haven't had a reasonable, we haven't had a legitimate two-way guy.
I don't think Wilcox was ever on our team.
We signed him to a two-way, and then he was, hurt or something and never did anything. Who else did we have on a two-way?
That was way before two-ways. We had Baldwin, and I think that was the first year of it. We had Baldwin, and we were going to have...
Blazers signed guard CJ Wilcox to two-way contract. Yeah, he was our first two-way signing. CJ Wilcox.
Mm-hmm.
And then Baldwin, yeah.
Baldwin was the same year. Yeah. But Wilcox, I don't think he ever even...
He never suited up. Never, I think he suited up for a preseason game, and that was it. He was
and then there was the year we didn't have anyone. And then just randomly one year we had Jalen Horde and Moses Brown, which was great. I mean, not great, but
Moses Brown is now legit.
We actually utilized our two spots, right? And then we just let them go last year. We signed freaking Keljin Blevins, and then we let the other one go, even though we have this situation where we need depth and there's roster issues and injuries, and luckily our team didn't have an outbreak, but lots of teams needed roster spots, but we just chose to not even have one, even though it doesn't count against the cap. And then we waited till the end of the year to sign TJ Leaf for some reason. I don't even know why, but yeah. But I'm just glad we used Watford as one. I don't know. They haven't announced what the plan for Greg Brown is. Last year, we assumed Ellaby was going to be two-way, but they ended up having to use him on the roster because second-round picks can sign for less than minimum contract. So that was a case of staying just under that tax line with a second-round pick contract. And so I guess that could be the case this year, but I could also see Brown just signing a two-way depending on how free agency goes. It might be a case where they wait to see who they sign first and see how the roster spots shake out.
Yep. Anyway, what's next?
Next, let's talk about... Okay, we have our tax mid-level for sure. Give me 3 names you are calling right at 3 p.m. Pacific time tomorrow to inquire about for that contract.
Yeah, because I took it. I was gonna put out a MLE targets video, but I was just I'm gonna relax today. Yeah. No, I'm not putting it out. So this is a good question. I just
So yeah, first give me your number one target, and then give me a couple of backup options in case that doesn't work out.
See, it kind of depends on if we trade CJ or not.
Mm-hmm.
But Nick Batum would be probably the first guy I call. The second guy I call would be... See, like, I want to say, like, Kelly Olynyk. He's worth more than that, but I think there's a chance he might not get more than that. But, like, if he doesn't get more than that, he'll wait. So you don't have to call him right away.
Right.
So Batum... Chat, you can toss out names if you want as well.
Chat's already named my 3.
Okay, but Batum, Otto Porter Jr., and... Tice? Probably Tice?
Yeah.
Yeah, Batum, Otto Porter Jr., and Daniel Tice.
I think I'm calling Otto first, Batum second, and Torrey Craig would be my third. Just to get a wing that can play defense, and I'm just going for some toughness on the team. And yeah, I think those would be my 3 calls. I don't know how likely Torrey Craig is, but I'd throw Jeff Green in there too, who's also being mentioned.
I would rather call Tice than Craig because, like, we're going to need a backup center next year.
Yeah.
Like, and the only way I'm, like, prioritizing wings over centers is if they're, like, Batum or Otto Porter Jr. quality.
We're not getting...
Torrey Craig isn't quite up there.
We're not getting Nerlens Noel.
Nerlens Noel is getting more than that.
I'd be fine if we called him and he accepted that. That's great. But we're not getting him for that amount. He's getting probably closer to $10 million or more.
Here's why I call Batum first. I think he is more positionally versatile than Otto Porter Jr. So
that's kind of like the Middleton versus like other trade targets we talked about. Like you can play different positions. Yeah,
I think Batum could play 2 through 4. Otto Porter Jr. is like a 3-4, and probably more of a 4 than a 3. I think Batum could play 3 or 4 equally well, and then could play some 2.
I wonder how much. If he still has ill will towards Portland, or if he's over that, or if he still hates Olshey for trading him, or he's happy Olshey traded him, maybe. I think that the Batum situation is 100% Billups. So if he liked Billups last year, if he liked playing for Billups, I think Billups could sell him on this is what your role would be. This is what I was trying to teach you last year, and this is you'd be doing this in Portland. You know exactly how I coach and how I'll treat you here. So I think I would have Billups like reach out to him first and be like, hey man, are you interested in coming here, or you still have hard feelings or whatever, because I'd love to have you. And so Harvey Grant says that he thinks they're all getting more than the taxpayer mid-level, but okay, so here's the deal though. I don't see Batum getting much more. I mean, maybe a team has the full mid-level and overpays him, but the teams with cap space are not going to be calling Nick Batum tomorrow, like when the free agency opens. So this is when Portland gets a Al-Farouq Aminu, who might have gotten more if he waited, maybe, or whatever. But like you call those guys who are kind of fringe, maybe they're worth a little more than the tax mid-level, but they're not getting calls for anything other than the mid-level exception. So they're going to be trying to determine just what team they want to go to for the same amount of money. It's not like, oh man, New Orleans called and is offering me like 3 years, $60 million, or Portland's offering me $5 million. Like, it's not going to be the difference in contracts. So you can, a lot of times, if you're the first person to call someone or show interest in someone, they like that. You're the first one, and that's why we see so many signings happen right away. And I mean, the Derek Jones signing was only a few hours into free agency, and I just think if you target the right people, it turns out the only reason why it took so long for Derek Jones is because we had a couple other offers to Millsap and Ibaka, who basically we were waiting on to see if we had any chance for. And it didn't work out. So I would actually go right for one of those targets. And I mean, Tori, how much different could the stream be tomorrow than last year? if we're talking about re-signing Norman Powell and getting one of these like 3 to 5 guys we've just mentioned right away in free agency, and we're like celebrating instead of you throwing your hat and like being all mad at the world and stuff.
Derrick Jones Jr. I mean, fingers crossed, man. Fingers crossed. I was excited for last offseason, and then and that wasn't
right.
It was still not solid a trade offseason, but
yeah, it's still not a trade, but we're still in the same position we would be in, but we have a better roster surrounding that. So. And a CJ trade is more likely if we have Batum and Norman Powell, so we have the depth to make up for that. So, I would absolutely go after those guys. There's going to be teams like the Lakers, the Clippers, several contenders that only have that tax mid-level exception. And it's pretty much shaping out to be there's a few teams with a lot of money, and most of the teams have that like tax mid-level exception, and there's not much in between. So you're going to have the teams going after the big fish, and you're going to have the teams going after the little fish. And you want to be one of those guys who get a good deal. And if we're sitting here and like I don't know a name, but like if we sign someone that does not make sense, like I'm going to be kind of mad because there's seemingly a lot of guys we can get at that price range that would be good for our team.
Yeah. I forgot what I was gonna say. I'm blanking on what I was gonna say, but
man, if we resign Zach, get like a Batum or Otto Porter Jr. And resign Norman Powell, like within the first 2 hours of free agency, we're gonna be partying on stream. That's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, we will be. Oh, that's such a good thing to say, and I completely forget. Yeah. I'm so annoyed at myself.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's. I can't get over. I'm like trying to think of what I was gonna say.
And then we followed up with the big trade later.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. Like, the other guy I'd call immediately is Kawhi. And see if he'd be willing to take a meeting. And you just kind of work on that on the side, and then if somehow a miracle happens, then you figure things out around that in terms of a sign and trade. But, yeah, I mean, it just comes back to the Siakam trade has to happen for me. But it's fun to think about how we can round out the roster. Because at this point... Okay, here's the... I can't remember if this was what I was thinking about, but here's my question for you. Going back to the... If we could take on Thaddeus Young in a Pascal Siakam trade, would you play Thaddeus Young as the backup 5, or would you play him more as the backup 4?
I have never really liked that as a 5. I would play him as the backup 4.
Okay.
I understand. Like if we end up with Rocco and Siakam gets healthy, and you have Thad Young, then sure you can probably play Siakam and Rocco with Thad Young together. Like, you could play 2 of those 3 and have one be the center. I think you can get away with it for a while. I just wouldn't sign him as the backup center or trade for him as the backup center.
So what would be your plan then with Thad Young being the backup 4? Like, who would you go after to be the backup 5?
Well, honestly, I feel like there's a million guys every year. Not a million, but like... You know what I mean? There's so many centers that are fine. Like, people have mentioned a Gorgie Jang in chat that could be for a minimum. I mean, that's not who I want. I'm just saying.
Yeah,
like, I
here's
think
just the issue. Here's just the issue. You'd want a center that can play some defense and hit threes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would love to get Boucher instead of Thad Young in that deal.
I mean... Yeah, I just don't think that's likely. Like, it's going to be hard. Like, it's going to be hard to get... I don't know. Like, we have to give up more value in a Siakam trade, supposedly, so getting back Boucher, too, is... I don't know. I'm not really counting on that. Obviously, that'd be great, but I'm just thinking, like, Thad Young, if Zach Collins could get healthy... Zach Collins is the perfect center to put next to Thad Young off the bench.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Otherwise, you want a 3-and-D stretch 5, which are hard to find. We wouldn't have the salary to trade for Larry Nance Jr. or the picks, most likely.
Well, we could trade Rokai.
I mean, but that doesn't make any sense.
I know.
You're not. Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking like Thad Young is a guy here. I don't know. Like Thad Young is a guy I like, but if we get Siakam, we almost don't need Thad Young as much. I don't know, but that's interesting. If you toss Derek Jones Jr. to Toronto, you can go to another team and essentially take on $17 million in salary without that team getting anything back.
Yep.
Which is intriguing to me.
Well, let's just say you did get Thad Young, then you go after those centers we talked about, like Daniel Tice and, those types. But if you re-sign Zach, you only really need someone until Zach's healthy, and then you're fine, Yeah.
I mean, at that point, I think you'd have to consider like trying to trade Nasir Little in a couple seconds for Naz Reid and swap out Naz's, because it would be easier to find a small forward that fits next to Thad Young and off that bench with the MLE than it would be to find a 3-and-D stretch 5, and that's what Naz Reid is. So I know nobody wants to trade Nasir Little, and I don't really want to trade him either, but, if you're trying to contend, like, at that point you'd have to consider something like that, which might be like an under-the-radar trade that'd be on the table. Eric hates that idea so much he muted himself and left.
Screw that trade.
Really? You're really that much against it?
Yeah, I would.
Naz Reid is nice. I feel like if Naz Reid was a Blazer, we would value him more than Naz Little.
Yeah, man.
I mean, dude.
I know why you like him. I would be disgusted if we traded Naz for and seconds for him.
I don't like. Naz Reid is far more proven at the NBA level than Nasir Little is, though.
I don't think Minnesota even really cares. They probably throw him. We could probably get him as a throw-in in that trade.
I don't think they're giving up a guy that averaged 11 points per game, shot 35% from 3, 60% from 2, 11 points per game and only 19 minutes per game, is a good defender, 3-and-D stretch 5 as a throw-in, and he's still only 21 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, like, that dude is underrated.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I just don't think it's worth necessarily giving up a ton for.
Yeah, it's just funny. Yeah, I mean, like, okay, I love Nasir Little. Blazer fans have they overrate him now, and he could break out and be phenomenal, right? But at this point, we don't know what he is. Like, even with Chauncey, he still might not be good enough to even be in the rotation. I would give him the chance next year, and that's why I say, like, he's our backup 3 next year. I'd give him a chance. I think more likely it would work out, and he could be a backup 3. But it's like, people aren't familiar with, like, a Naz Reid because he plays on the Timberwolves and is off their bench. But, like, I feel like if he was doing what he did for Minnesota, if he was doing that here, Blazer fans would absolutely love him and value him so much. But since he's not our guy, like, we don't. And, like, I don't know. I just feel like at this point, some Blazer fans treat Nasir Little as untouchable, and I think that's a little bit too much.
I wouldn't say untouchable, but I would be very hesitant to include him in any trade, especially just for someone like that, because, I mean, the one major knock on Little was that his shot was bad, and he seems to have fixed that somewhat. And if that guy becomes anywhere close to a 40% three-point shooter, he was a decent free throw shooter last year. He's got athleticism. He can drive. He can pass. I just think there's not many weaknesses in his game. He's, by all accounts, should be a plus defender. I would hesitate to give a guy who can seemingly do it all in a trade like that, but that's just me.
Eric, yeah.
I'm not overrating him. I just wouldn't trade him for someone like that unless we had to include him in this Siakam trade or whatever.
Last year, post All-Star break in 28 games,
I understand. Nasir Little
shot 25.6%.
I know.
I don't know. Like, I don't know what his shooting is. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I feel like
he also like barely played after the All-Star.
Yeah,
break.
in his role was yanked around. Yeah, you know what I mean. Like, but that's the thing is like he's still so unproven. We still don't know. And like part of the not knowing aspect is part of the reason like why I want to keep him, because like what if he could be really good, and what if Chauncey's going to be the perfect coach for him, and that's why I'm like hesitant to include him. Like I'm not doing that trade straight up. I'm saying like if you got Thad Young, you would have to consider that and think about that, because you would probably need a stretch 5 off the bench next to Thad Young.
See, I would probably just play that at the 5 then, if that was what it took.
I mean, sure, I guess, but I mean, yeah, like Naz Reid is legit.
Or resign Giles in that situation.
Naz Reid, in my opinion, is the most underrated big man in the league.
Yeah, but
third. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say so that only makes $14 million, so we still have a $3 million cushion in that Siakam trade, right? So
yeah,
I would call Minnesota and say, hey, here's 2 or 3 second-round picks or something like that, and just see what they say. I mean, the worst they can say is, no, we value him as like a first-rounder. And maybe in your case, you should maybe consider giving up a first-rounder for him. And so we just give up 1 extra first in that, and we get both of those guys in addition to Siakam, and then we have a steal of a. But yeah, it's. I'd be cool with that, but I wouldn't go out of my way to give up Ant or Nas for him.
Yeah. I love Nas Reid. Ian is right. Per 36 last year, 21 points per game, 9 rebounds per game. He just got stuck behind Karl Anthony Towns. That's the problem. That's why I think he might be like an under-the-radar guy that gets traded this offseason, because he's stuck behind Karl Anthony Towns. And
but also, that team sucks, so players like that don't get valued super highly. I think you could maybe just get him. I mean, how much does he make? Is it less than
1.8 million? Let me see.
He might fit into one of our TPEs, right? So we might not even have to send in.
Yeah, because we have I think we do. Yeah. So he could be a target. If Minnesota doesn't value him, that's a guy I would have already called Minnesota on and been like, how do you what do you think about Naz Reid? How do you value him? What would it take to potentially get him?
The funniest thing though would be people would be like, oh, we make a stupid surface level trade and it doesn't do anything,
Bro, it's you trade seconds for a guy who averaged 11 points per game and shot 35% from 3 at center and played less than 20 minutes per game when he was doing that and plays defense. Yeah.
We have a TP. It's basically the minimum, so we have to find someone who makes basically the minimum.
Yeah. So
Heine, we can't trade Collins for Naz Reid. Collins is a free agent.
Yeah. Anyway. Do you want to take questions? What next? We're kind of going all over the place here, but it's fun.
Yep.
Hello. Hello? Okay, goodbye. Yeah. So I don't know. I like Thad Young as a throw-in, and that's. Who are some other targets you guys would want to toss onto that trade? Because that's the thing. If you trade out CJ and Derrick Jones Jr. for a Pascal Siakam, you can take $17.5 million back from another team. And here's the thing, if Toronto wants first, maybe we take back a bad contract and get a first that we could send to Toronto. That's something you could consider. If, I don't know. There aren't a lot of bad contracts out there, but that's the other thing, Eric, is if Toronto wants first, back with CJ McCollum and Derrick Jones Jr. for Pascal Siakam, then you could maybe take on a bad contract and get a first that way and send it to Toronto. Maybe for an Eric Gordon or something. I don't know. There's not a ton of bad contracts out there, though.
Dwight Powell is mentioned by Zacho.
And Dwight Powell could be good enough to be our backup center.
Yeah.
He's borderline rotation guy.
So if they did do that sign and trade, that could be a situation where Dragic goes to Dallas, and then we have a first, and Dallas gives up a first, Dorian Finney-Smith, and Powell, and then we have a backup center and another wing that we can add to our depth of wings.
Yeah, the problem though, Dallas can't give up a first until 2027.
But I mean, we're talking about if we're giving up 2 or 3 firsts, it's going to be one of them's going to have to be down the road anyway, right?
Yeah, and it could be
because now you can trade
for next season. Toronto gets the best out of Dallas and Portland, and you know what I mean. And Dallas gets the worst. Toronto gets the best out of Dallas and Portland, and then Dallas gets the worst. It could be a situation like that to increase the value of one of our picks or something. You good?
Not really, but yeah.
Yeah, this is like good. Reggie Bullock, I'm not interested in. Dorian Finney-Smith is a good role player, but I don't see anything like that making sense. Here's the thing. I want to do the math on this. If you 30.8 for CJ McCollum plus 9.7 for Derrick Jones Jr. plus 1.5 for CJ Ellaby, that's $42 million. Times 1.25 plus 0.1, that's how much salary we could bring in, minus Pascal Siakam. If you included if you had McCollum, Ellaby, and Derrick Jones Jr. and we're getting back Siakam, you could bring back $19.6 million. So if you added CJ Ellaby into that, it would go from being able to bring back about 17.5 to being able to bring back about 19.6. So just like rough estimate numbers, but it's in that ballpark. So if there's somebody worth $19 million, you could maybe toss a CJ Ellaby into that and take back 19.6. So that's the hypothetical I brought up earlier, is if Toronto is signing and trading Lowry to Miami because they want Precious Achiuwa back, but they have to take on Goran Dragic, maybe you could turn it into a situation. Goran Dragic makes about 19.4. So maybe you could provide value for Toronto by taking back Siakam and Goran Dragic and giving them McCollum, Derrick Jones Jr., and CJ Ellaby. They would save about $9 million moving off Dragic, getting back Jones and Ellaby. I don't know. I don't know if they want to do that. I'm just tossing out hypotheticals here. I'm just thinking creatively. I'll take questions until Eric's back. Taurian Prince, I'm not interested in. He's not good enough to be a rotation player on a contending team. You can get Thad, Pascal, and Naz Reid salary rise for Derrick Jones Jr. and CJ McCollum. So, that would be a home run. If we did that, I would probably cry tears of joy. That is... I just think Naz Reid has too much value to be able to kind of throw him in there. But Thad Young is a legitimate option. Thad Young, today, became partially guaranteed. Before, he was non-guaranteed. Which means if the Bulls waived him yesterday, he wouldn't have counted anything against their salary cap this year. Today, he had $6 million of his contract guaranteed. So if the Bulls simply released him today, he would count $6 million against their salary cap in terms of dead money. I think they could stretch it out where it'd cost $2 million the next 3 years. But if they keep him on the roster, he's making $14 million approximately. Let me get the exact amount. Thad Young contract. By the way, I use spottrack.com for contract information. Thaddeus Young this next season is making $14.2 million. So it's a situation where if Chicago wants to free up free agent money for Alonzo Ball, they're going to have to trade Satoransky and or Thaddeus Young. I don't know their exact salary position, but they're going to have to trade one of those guys. Instead of just releasing Thad Young and having him count $6 million against their salary cap, if we could step in and take back his contract without giving anything up to Chicago, it would be better for them than just simply releasing him in order to sign Lonzo Ball. So that's kind of the situation where DJ and CJ for Pascal Siakam would give us the opportunity to add another good role player to that deal. It could be a different team that doesn't want a player at a certain salary, but is a decent player like a Thad Young. So And then maybe, depending on who we get back, Eric, maybe it's a situation where it's like, okay, we're willing to give Toronto a little bit more value for taking on Derek Jones Jr., who they're fine with taking on. We're willing to give Toronto a little bit more value because the Siakam deal helps us facilitate a situation where we can also get another really good role player on top of that.
Yep.
So maybe that's the way Portland and Toronto could bridge the gap in terms of what Toronto wants and what Portland is willing to give up.
Or if you were trying to somehow swing both Siakam and Grant, then you include Rocco to another team that gives you 2 firsts or something, like we gave up last year.
Rocco, huh?
Well, it pretty much had to be Rocco unless you want to trade Dirk. But
I mean, you're getting creative here. So let's just do this for fun.
Well,
all right.
This has always been my favorite. Get CJ for Siakam for as least amount of assets as possible.
Yeah.
Find a team that has either an expiring contract or can take on Rocco that would value him as much as he's been valued the previous 2 times he's been traded. Actually 3, because he was one of the main pieces in a Jimmy Butler trade, and then he was also he was traded for basically 2 firsts with Houston. They had to trade Capella to get a first and then trade the 2 firsts or whatever. And then we traded him for 2 firsts. So his value is basically 2 firsts. So you basically just trade him to, say, New York for 2 future firsts, or a team that has an extra first. It doesn't have to be New York. It could be any team. And then you use those 2 extra firsts to get combined with like a Rocco and a DJ going, or not Rocco, but Rocco going out for us as salary, and a DJ either going to Toronto or Detroit, and then you bring in Jeremy Grant and get Siakam with CJ as well.
Yeah. I'm getting conflicting salary numbers on Pascal. Hold on.
We'd probably have to give up like like 5 future firsts in that, but including the 2 we got from Rocco, but I think that'd be worth it.
We can't give up 5 future firsts. What do you mean?
No, I mean like the 2 from the Knicks and then the 3.
Oh, yeah.
So we give basically 3 to Detroit for Grant and then 2 to Toronto for Siakam.
Yeah. I mean, hypothetically.
And in that trade, I don't know if Thad fits in that, but I've tried it with Ingles, and I think Ingles fits in where we could take on like a few extra things.
I just don't think they're trying to give up Ingles at this point. They got off.
No, I'm just saying,
so.
like, still Thad Young might fit. I'm just saying because that Ingles is like $13 million, and I think it works. So an extra $1 million for Thad might still work. Everyone, I'm fine. So my family's been sick. All been tested. No one has COVID, and we're all good. But yeah, it's been kind of.
Here's what's interesting, and I don't know if I'd want to do this, but okay, McCollum, Ellaby, Derek Jones Jr., and Robert Covington. If you're taking back Siakam, you could take back an additional $35.9 million on top of Siakam.
And Grant only
traded
makes
out those
20.
4.
Yeah, so Thad Young. You could almost swing. Oh, we have that TP. So yeah, you could do Thad Young and Nasri.
I mean, you could do a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
You could do a bunch of stuff. And this is where I'm hoping like Olshey has like a bunch of options on the table. He's thought about all these different creative ways where he can make things happen. I mean, at that point, would you swap Robert Covington out for Tobias Harris?
I think if we have Siakam, I think I'd rather keep Rocco.
Yeah.
But
I'm just saying, like...
Yeah, I mean, but yeah, we could get super creative with that.
Like, you could
That's why I mentioned Harrison Barnes earlier, is because, like, that's another guy. If Detroit won't trade Grant, I think Barnes kind of fits at the 3 a little better than Rocco or Grant. But
who is somebody on the market that you would be willing to flip Rocco in that situation other than a Jeremy Grant?
There isn't many, because Rocco, I think, is super underrated. So, there isn't many players. But if we're talking about making a huge swing to prove to Damian Lillard that we are serious about putting the best possible players around him, getting him some stars to play with, I I don't think you can do much better than Siakam and Grant in the front court next to him, and then re-sign Norm. I think that's the kind of, like Jackson says, this will never happen, but this is the kind of stuff you have to be thinking of and trying to accomplish, thinking big like this, in my opinion.
Yeah, you gotta like figure out all your options, and there's a lot of options, and 90% of them aren't possible. Maybe 95%, but like me and you, we're thinking through this like GMs. Like this, how a GM and assistant GM and all his assistant GMs should be like just talking daily leading up to the offseason. Like that's how things should go. Like, okay, what's possible? What can we bring in? How can we structure things to make the most out of our assets, make the most out of our offseason? So me and Eric being nerds and studying the CBA and kind of knowing how roster construction is done, we bring that to the stream. Meanwhile, you have guys like Jason Quick like, yeah, it's impossible for them to bring Zach Collins back, which is just not true. You know what I mean? So that's, we bring you guys the nerdy side of things. I mean, who are other teams that are maybe looking to dump salary? Because that's the thing. If you can take back, salary without giving anything up, I feel like you got to look at teams that are looking to dump salary. Maybe Dallas. We said Dwight Powell, but Maxi Kleber?
Yeah, I mean, that's always been a guy that I think would fit in good. It's just if you, like you said, if you have fours, you don't necessarily, I think only makes like $8 million. So that wouldn't be very hard to get, I think. And that's a guy who shot 41% from three last year. So, yeah, it would be nice to have just some shooting.
Who else is trying to clear salary?
Well, New Orleans already did.
Yeah.
I would assume that the Grizzlies aren't giving up those pieces for nothing, but I mean, I guess you could get an Adams or a Bledsoe or both.
I wouldn't want either.
But not. Yeah. I'm just listing out teams.
Cleveland? What's Cleveland's plan?
I don't know.
Larry Nance Jr. and Shetty Osman make 18.9 combined. So if you did CJ, Derrick Jones Jr. and if you did McCollum, Ellaby, and Derrick Jones Jr.
Can't trade Ellaby, man. He's Norm's best friend.
Bro, if you're getting Larry Nance Jr. back,
no, I'm just kidding.
Like, that's the thing. I don't know what Cleveland is doing, but I could hypothetically see them, like, wadding off Osman and being able to attach a Larry Nance. I don't know.
There we go. We include Rocco and we can get Kevin Love. There we go.
Shut up. Bye.
How many firsts would it take for you to...
Literally every first that's in the entire NBA. And then maybe you'd have a discussion.
If they still want to give us Mobley and Love for that...
Ew. I mean, okay, no, Mobley would be dope, but like they ain't giving up Mobley. Like that ain't happening.
I know, but
but like if Cleveland wants to like swing after somebody in free agency, Shetty Osman's a negative contract, and then you toss Larry Nance Jr., you save like $18.6 million. I mean, I don't know. Cleveland's kind of dumb, so like that is an option. I mean, I'm just laying out options. Like that's the thing is like. If you're a GM, like, you gotta think of options. Even if they're extremely unrealistic, you don't know until you ask. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, you don't have to ask about if the Lakers would trade LeBron for freaking Kevin Love if you're Cleveland. But, like, stuff like this, everything I'm tossing out is stuff that I would try and see is possible. Like, it's worth asking. So, I mean, other teams...
I mean, I'm sure Boston would love to get off of Horford and...
I'm not giving up Rocco. You'd have to give up Rocco in that deal.
No, I know. I'm just trying to think of teams that would give up assets. What did you say? It was $35 million or something if we included all those guys?
I think like $36 million flat, approximately.
That's so close to...
Like a Tobias Harris, that's close. And I feel like I feel like Philadelphia would maybe trade Tobias Harris for Rocco and save that money and save $24 million or whatever off of Harris's contract. Probably not, but I mean, I probably wouldn't do that straight up though. I mean, what other teams are trying? Like, I still don't know what Indiana's doing. Like, Indiana's an impossible team to figure out. Wasn't there another team trying to save? Yeah, I don't want Terrence Ross.
Well, like you said, I mean, I'm sure Miami would give us Goran Dragic in that trade, but he doesn't really make a lot of sense for us.
Like, if you could get, like, I don't know how much Brooklyn wants to trade off DeAndre Jordan, but they're in luxury tax hell. So if they are willing to give up a future first to get off him, he wouldn't be a bad insurance, like, third-string big man. And you could use that Brooklyn first to maybe save one of your own, or, you just take it back or whatever. So, like, DeAndre Jordan maybe is just, like, a negative contract because he has 2 years left at about almost $10 million a year. And it's rumored that Brooklyn is looking to move off of him. My internet browser is crashing. I hope that doesn't crash the stream. Hello, Eric, you still there?
I'm here, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah. What's up?
Nothing. I'm just trying to think of your questions. What teams? Because it seems like New Orleans was the team that was willing to go up a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I'd be willing to take on Thomas Satoransky, too.
Yeah. He'd be a good backup, like, because he can kind of play the point, but so, like, with Simons, I think he'd be a good fit with Simons in, like, a second unit.
Yeah. Hopefully my stream doesn't crash because my internet just crashed, so.
Houston might try to get off, like, an Eric Gordon, but that, once again, doesn't make a ton of sense for us, but... What would you think tomorrow if Neil O'Shea's tax mid-level exception signing is Avery Bradley?
I would be pissed, bro. We don't need another guard.
What if we're trading CJ though?
We still don't need another guard. We have the 3-guard rotation.
Mm-hmm.
If we bring back Powell, you play Dame 36 minutes per game. You play Powell 33, 34 minutes per game. And then off the bench, you play Anthony Simons for 26, 27 minutes per game. And he's one of the top 10 sixth men in the league. That is our backcourt next year, in my opinion. I mean, right? Do you agree with that? Like,
yeah, I don't know if Simons can be like the full-time point guard, backup point guard. I don't know if that's his best role. I mean, I'd be fine with it. I just don't know if that's if he'd be better off ball or not.
If you have a half-court offense that utilizes motion, that utilizes ball movement, you don't need him to be like a guy facilitating everything. Wouldn't be like Stotts last year. You needed a guy facilitating everything because it was stagnant. You needed somebody creating stuff, and it was just pick and roll isolation stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So like, yeah, if Stotts was still the coach, like, I hear you. With Chauncey as the coach, it's like you just need somebody to bring the ball up and initiate the offense, hopefully. And Simons is good enough to do that. Also, if you have Siakam, you stagger Siakam with Dame, and Siakam helps Simons out in that regard with the bench lineup.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
So, I'm like not interested in guards.
I would have it'd probably be a minimum signing, but I would definitely get a vet point guard.
Yeah, but that's like, I don't know. I'm not really focusing on anything outside the rotation at this point, because that's kind of like the last thing to figure out.
I could see Neil going after him, though. For defense on the bench.
We don't need a guard. I don't know. I don't expect him to go after a guard.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know. What are you thinking?
I was just trying to look at teams. The Wizards. The Wizards look like they might be trying to clear up space or be trying to do a sign and trade for Dinwiddie, but there's not a lot. Would you take a Bertans?
No. Unless they're giving up a first. That's a bad contract, man. He's paid like $60 million the next 4 years, and all he is a 3-point shooter.
Huge volume, though.
Yeah, but his 3-point percentage declined last year, too. What did he shoot last year? Let me see. Oh, why's my internet browser so laggy right now in the world? Maybe I need to close all my Photoshop.
Oh, for Evan. Trying to be excited about tomorrow. You're bringing me down.
Yeah, that'd be disgusting. I don't think Justice wins. I don't know, man. I don't think Justice wins. Other than Bertans, who on their team is like maybe a cap dump candidate? Thomas Bryant?
Yeah, Thomas Bryant. I mean,
our backup center.
If they want to throw in Gafford for taking on Bertans,
I don't see them doing that.
That'd be sweet.
Yeah, but it's just like he's a very cheap, insanely good backup big man. You know, like. Yeah, I mean. I think they would rather give up Thomas Bryant, which I would take on Thomas Bryant. He's making what, $8 million the next couple years?
I think it might be expiring.
Even if he is, this is Thomas Bryant in 10 games this year. Averaged 14 points per game, 6 rebounds, 1.5 assists, shot 65% from the field and 43% from 3. Last season, 58%. He's what?
His defense is terrible.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
but he would fit next to like a Thad Young. I don't know. Which obviously we wouldn't be able to get. So never mind.
Bertans shot 39.5% on 7.5 attempts this year.
Yeah, like at that point,
42,
you really want a 3-point specialist that does nothing else, Eric?
Yeah.
I mean, at that point, you just sign Melo to the minimum. I don't want a guy like that. So, you guys got any candidates? I'll give you a huge shout out if y'all can come up with a good candidate. As like a salary dump guy that we could take on that could be in our rotation.
Brandon Sims and Mike Posner, can we please stop the personal attacks? This will be your last and only warning.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just stop. Just don't talk to each other if you can't be civil.
Yep.
And anyone else in chat, please do not join in any of their...
Monty Morris is not available. I don't think he's available. They need him next year. They don't have Jamal Murray for almost the entire season. We have mods, right? Yeah, we do have mods. Trevin's in here. Everybody else, I think, is... Oh, Zach's in here. Jackson's been MIA.
Jackson popped in.
Jackson's in here.
Yeah.
What did he say?
He said he just got off work and he'd be around soon. Yeah.
Yeah. Is he going to be here tomorrow? How many mods are we going to have tomorrow? Yeah, I'm struggling to think of like other targets. I don't know. Do you think of anything? You're very quiet.
No, I mean, we've pretty much talked about every person.
Yeah. Also, I don't blame you because that cough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm trying to have another fit. I did say take some NyQuil, though, when I...
Yeah, hopefully that's not the case tomorrow.
Yeah. I mean,
Fingers crossed.
I was good during the draft stream, so...
Yeah. Ian not really looking for one at the moment. We also got Krish who will help us mod tomorrow and help us with graphics a little bit. Gary Harris salary dump. Is he on an expiring?
Yeah, 18 million expiring, I think.
He's just a guard, so like if you could get back an asset.
I don't know if he's 2 years or not.
No, this is last year. The problem with him is he's making $20 million though, so he makes too much. Like I'm looking, guys. we can bring back up to like 17.5 if it's CJ and Derek Jones Jr. for Siakam. If we add an Ellaby, we could take back about 19.6. Gary Harris makes $20.5 million. In order to look at salaries, I literally just search Gary Harris contract and then go to the Spot Track link, spottrack.com. That's how I look at salaries. To look at stats, I use Basketball Reference. I would search Gary Harris stats, and both those sites are usually like the first thing in a search result. Mm-hmm. Jonathan Isaac, we'd have to give up multiple assets for, so I don't see him as a realistic. I'm just looking for guys that would be valuable on our roster, but like teams that don't really want to pay him next year and would rather have some cap space. Is there anybody on New York like that?
No, they don't have any bad contracts, I don't think.
Yeah.
That's the problem. There's not many bad contracts left in the NBA right now. There might be again after tomorrow.
We need to have another cap spike.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, once... because Blake Griffin would have been possibly a perfect scenario here where we get a Blake Griffin on the last year of his deal, but they were dumb and have $30 million in dead cap space this year. So
yeah, CJ and Derek Jones Jr. for Harris and Isaac is like I don't think that works. Isaac makes $17 million, Harris makes $36 million, Siakam makes $33. So yeah, that'd be a little too much. I don't think Isaac's available either. Devontae Graham is a free agent. Kyle Anderson...
He's also going to get more than the tax mid-level, so much like Duncan Robinson, I don't think we have a chance.
Yeah, Kyle Anderson raised his value last year. I don't think he's a guy that Memphis is just going to give up. And I don't think they're looking for cap space anyway. They took on Bledsoe and Valanciunas so they could draft... No, they took on Bledsoe and Adams for Valanciunas just so they could draft Zaire Williams.
Yeah.
Which, Zaire Williams could be really good. So, if he ends up being really good, like, that's worth it long term. So, we'll have to wait and see. Who did New Orleans take at 17? They took Trey Murphy, who's another guy I really like. So, I need to, like, I've been trying to, like, remember which rookies got drafted to which teams, but it's hard. Outside, like, the top of the draft.
New Orleans going to throw him into the CJ trade when he sends CJ.
Bagley, maybe? Yeah, maybe Bagley. I'm not super high on Bagley, though. He's a terrible defender.
That fits the lottery bust profile.
Yeah. Highly touted high school prospect, lottery bust. Another trade with the Kings, too, Eric. Maudie? What is Maudie?
I think he's saying Moody.
Rashawn Holmes is a free agent.
Thoughts on Justice Winslow is I would be more mad than the Derek Jones Jr. signing. If we
I don't want him for the minimum.
I guess I'd be okay if it was the minimum just as a flyer because that once again fits the lottery bust profile. But yeah, I don't want him. Yeah,
I don't want him for the. He's overweight now. He's always injured. The last 2 seasons, his field goal percentage. 39%, 35%. His three-point percentage, 22%, 19%. This is a guy who's declined, and maybe part of it is due to injuries, but, I mean, he's gained weight. I think some of it's a work ethic issue. He's not a guy who should be signed, in my opinion. He's a guy that should be playing in Europe next year. And maybe he can rehabilitate his career and get back into the league, but this dude's career is cratered.
What's up, Tyrus?
What's up, Tyrus?
Park Rose. We have some other Park Rose people in here.
What's Sacramento's salary situation like? Because, yeah, Harrison Barnes is an intriguing... Harrison Barnes, doesn't he make $20 million, though?
Yeah, it's 20 to 23.
So you'd have to trade out Rocco in that situation, which I wouldn't. So... 19.6 and under. He has a declining contract, so next year's salary would work, but he's at 20.3 million. Mario, I should ban you, Carson. I should give you a 5-minute ban for that. Tony Snell, as a free agent, he's just not... He's a 3-point shooter who does literally nothing else well. I want more dynamic players than that. Hopefully. I can see that being
Tony
the MLE
Snell's the
signing,
goat.
though, is Tony Snell.
He's the goat. Sacramento. See, the problem is they're going to be looking to. They have to deal one of their guards. That's so ridiculous.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they would trade Barnes, but
yeah, I don't know. I can't think of any other cap dumps. So
they're a little under the cap, but they're going to be trying to re-sign Rashawn.
Here's the thing. Wait, how much? Toronto's situation, okay? Since like this is based around the hypothetical CJ Derek Jones Jr. for Siakam trade, with us giving first to Toronto. If we attach CJ Ellaby, we could also bring back Goran Dragic. In that scenario, do you think Toronto would want to do that to save $10 million or so?
Yeah, you can maybe even. There might be a team that would take Derek Jones for nothing, and they save even more.
Well, maybe that team is him going back to Miami. How much do you think? How much are they rumored to be signing Lowry for?
I've heard like $30 million. Yeah.
For how many years?
I don't know. Well, it would have to be.
Gross.
Well, it'd have to be a 3-year contract.
Yeah.
2 years could be non-guaranteed, but yeah. So it'd have to be at least 3 years. I don't know. I'm assuming that Lowry's only going to sign because he has to agree to the contract. They can't just trade him. So I'm assuming he's going to get 3-year contracts for that much, which is crazy. But yeah.
I mean, if they... Let me go to Toronto Raptors team payroll. It's hard to figure it out. So they're going to get rid of Hood and Baines. So they have...
You see they pushed Hood's guaranteed date to the 3rd or something? Just to...
Yeah. How much does Gary Trent Jr.'s cap hold?
I will find that out for you. I think it's like minimal. I think it's like $4 million or something.
That's it? Dang.
Yeah, because
that was a little higher.
No, because he's a 2nd-round pick. And it's like the Allen Crabbe was only like a $2 or $3 million cap hold for us. That's why we re-signed him just so much. People don't understand that, but there was a reason why we re-signed all those guys.
All right, so that's...
His cap hold is $2.079 million.
So they're probably telling him, like, we'll give you a bag if you just wait, if they're chasing cap space. Plus... I mean, they would have about $17 million in cap space if we took on Dragic and gave them Derek Jones Jr. and, what's his face? Ellaby.
Yeah.
Instead of having about $7 million in cap space, they could have like 6...
But
no, they would have 20. They would have 20 million. They would have 20 million in cap space approximately.
They could also have a guy like, but like if Dragic is reshipped to Dallas, they could just take him on too. So they might not need us to do that.
Yeah, but does Dallas really want Dragic?
I don't know.
Like, wouldn't they rather just have like a Reggie Jackson for cheaper?
I don't know if I'm guessing Reggie Jackson's going to resign.
I'm just saying, here's the thing, like, maybe you can, because like you got to give additional value to Toronto on top of CJ for Siakam. That additional value might be taking on Dragic and giving them back Derek Jones Jr. and CJ Ellaby so they save some money and have some more cap space. If they can't find something else for Dragic.
But they could also just be like, no, I don't want to do a sign and trade and not do that.
I'm not saying for sure.
Yeah.
I'm not saying for sure. I'm saying, like, if that deal
I think Dragic
commences.
is too good to just let them... I think they could get something for him, so I don't think they're going to just salary dump him. Plus, who would they like really be able to sign with that money to make it worth it? That's better than Dragic.
Might be a better long-term fit, you know what I mean? So
yeah.
I mean, campaign, maybe they're interested in, who's a little bit younger. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking hypotheticals here.
Mm-hmm.
We'll take questions from chat. And
I
then we'll
definitely think that would be interesting. I just don't know if them getting a little bit more cap space this year really factors into their long-term plans.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I don't know. Basically, just trade for Siakam, though. You know, let's just simply put, just please go get Siakam.
Mm-hmm.
How many firsts would you be willing to attach to CJ to get Siakam? I think I asked you this before, but I forget.
Oh, man, I would give 3, but I really don't want to give 3, but I would give 3. If I had to.
I would give 3 if they took on Derrick Jones Jr., and it allowed us to get like a Thad Young.
Yeah, if you give up 3, you have to get something.
Like
whether it's Naz Reid or someone else, you have to somehow get enough equity back to get someone else.
Yeah, I mean, a target we haven't talked about on the stream that intrigues me is TJ Warren as a throw-in into a trade.
We did talk about it already.
Did we?
Yeah, we talked about your trade with Indiana.
Oh, yeah. But like in terms of like not sending CJ to Indiana, like in terms of CJ to Toronto and DJ to Toronto, we could take on TJ Warren, but we would have to give up assets to Indiana too, so that's a long shot.
Did you hear what happened with Duarte?
What?
I guess the Warriors were pissed that they took him at 13.
Really?
I think the Warriors were his promise. And he
That's what I was saying.
And the Pacers took him ahead of him. And I guess they offered a crap ton. And Pacers was like, nope.
Wait, what is a crap ton?
Like 14 and future first. So it would have been like
Indiana! Moody. What are you doing?
I don't know.
Chris Duarte for Moses Moody and future first?
Yeah, I guess they wanted him that badly. But I don't know why. I guess they thought he would for sure be there at 14. But yeah.
Bruh. Indiana. What? Indiana's... Okay. Honestly?
But
Indiana is not well run, in my opinion. They made, like, getting LeVert was a steal, but it's just like... They have so many... They need to be more active. Do that trade. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do that trade if you're them.
Yeah,
I would rather have Moody than Duarte straight up.
Yeah.
Dude, like, sometimes I just see what teams do, and it's just like, I wish I was a GM. I mean, oh my goodness. Like, you want a 24-year-old rookie that badly over a shooting guard who's 6'6" with a 7'1" wingspan, who's a three-point shooter, defensive player with off-the-dribble ability.
Yeah.
Who's still like 19 years old. Mm-hmm. That you're not willing to give up the 24-year-old rookie for him in future first? Are you kidding me? That's so funny, though.
I know.
Imagine being pissed that you got Moody. Like,
I don't know how true this is because it was from a different source, but I guess they wanted Giddey at 7 too, and
did they?
We're mad that
and they get Kuminga.
Yeah,
bro.
But I guess Draymond texted him. He just said, "Take Kuminga," and so they took Kuminga. Then he's like, "Take Moody," and they took Moody.
So they're mad about their draft. Oh my goodness. Yeah. I don't. Did you hear that a lot of teams wanted Josh Primo in the teens?
I don't buy that.
I mean, I buy it.
Dude.
Yeah. I mean, like, it sounded too detailed to just be somebody just making stuff up.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like San Antonio would have traded down. Like, San Antonio was smarter than that. You know, I mean, we were shocked that it was San Antonio making the reach like that.
Yeah.
So, I believe a team was going to take him in the teens.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that report. And, like, San Antonio couldn't find a spot to trade down for him.
Yeah, so apparently with the Warriors, they decided they do want to keep their young guys. So Wiseman Kuminga, Moody, and that they're just going to go all out as deep in the tax as they need to sign players. But
I mean, they only have their taxpayer MLE and then minimums.
And they could re-sign Oubre, yeah, to whatever. But yeah.
That team, I don't think, is a Tier 1 contender next year. Draymond has declined. Who knows what Clay is?
It depends.
They don't
on
have the
Clay,
same role players they used to.
If Clay's back and he's somewhat near what he was a couple years ago, I could maybe see them jumping back up, but
they're still not going to be as good as they were
coming
before.
Off the two injuries he's come off of. That's really hard for him next year. It'll probably be a full year before he's even
Because Clay is likely going to be at least slightly worse, and then Draymond's much worse than he was, a much worse 3-point shooter, and then they don't have the same role players. So they're not going to be like a top 1-2 team in the West, in my opinion. They'll be a playoff team, but
if they get Iguodala, I guess they could have the same role players.
but he's declined. You know what I mean? They could probably go convince Andrew Bogut to unretire. He's not going to be the Andrew Bogut.
Livingston.
Yeah, I mean, come on. So, any good questions, chat? We'll take questions and then.
Thank you. Yeah, Greg Oden, we don't need to hear about that. Had enough of your talk trying to listen to Damian Lillard's press conference when some bozo said he was gonna request a trade. We don't need to hear more about it.
Yeah, that's too much. Maybe shouldn't have perm banned, but seems like it's a burner anyway.
Hyper Prime says, Jeremy Lin, is he attainable? He's a free agent.
Attainable. So he's not even in the league.
Sure.
But I wouldn't care for him. Is Smith, meh. I'm not going to talk about guys for the 11th, 12th man spot. I'm talking legitimate targets, free agency questions. Can be about different teams too.
What would you... Who's the equivalent of Nick Stauskas and Mario Hezonja that we could sign this year?
Carmelo. No, just kidding. I don't know.
Anthony Tolliver.
Justice Winslow.
Justice Winslow's that guy for you?
Yeah. Kelly Olynyk, I'd love, but I don't think we have the money for.
Yeah.
How exactly can we land 2 superstars? We can't land 2 superstars.
Well, we already laid out the best we could probably do, and that's Siakam and Grant if we gave up
that's not too
future first and every
superstar.
other.
Yeah. Will Greg Brown get PT? No. Reggie Bullock? Not a fan. Alex Len? Not a fan. Serge Ibaka, if Kawhi leaves, would be a good target. But I don't think Kawhi's leaving. B, since the Clippers don't really have their future first, I'm not sure they would just want to. I don't think they'd go the rebuilding route. They'd just be screwed. So I don't know if we'd be able to get Ibaka. But that's interesting.
People mentioned Paul George. Steve Ballmer is not going to be like, oh, Kawhi left us, let's just trade everyone and rebuild. He's trying to be the team, he's gonna think that he can find someone else to pair with George. And he also watched them in the playoffs, put up a good fight in the Western Conference Finals without Kawhi. So I think they would think they were fine. I mean, obviously they want to keep Kawhi, but he's going to be out most of the year anyway, so it doesn't really change that much in my mind if he's out in terms of what they do long term as a franchise.
Nerlens Noel we can't afford. Omari Spellman, as I said, I'm not going to talk about guys that would be at the very end of our bench. Patty Mills, I'm not going to talk guards since they likely wouldn't be in our rotation. I don't think we're going to go after guards. I think our 3-guard lineup is going to be Dame, Powell, and Anthony Simons. Isaiah Roby wouldn't be a bad end of the roster yet, but he's likely going to be a restricted free agent. Same thing with Hartenstein. Kyle Anderson, I don't think is gettable. Oh, was he?
Yeah. So he is an unrestricted.
Well, no. I meant like he's gonna be like I don't think he'd be in our rotation.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. I forget how I said it, but that's what I meant. Ekpe Udo, Ian, stop saying guys would be at the end of our rotation, man. See, I open up to questions, and I say I'm not going to talk about guys that wouldn't be in our rotation, and we get Ekpe Udo and Tyreek Evans.
How are we going to get Cam Johnson? Udonis Haslam is either going to retire or go
Ian,
back
think hard about the next name you suggest, because you might have a 5-minute ban coming if it's a name that doesn't make any sense. Joel Freeland, I'm a ban anybody with troll suggestions for names. I'm trying to take questions and everybody's like, you should take more questions from chat, and then we get Wade Baldwin the fourth. I said no guards, no end of the roster.
Beavis, why are you bringing up stuff from like 2 months ago? It's Kevin Calabro is back.
Yeah. Bruce Brown is a restricted free agent, not gettable. Moutier, I would bring him onto the roster. He's on our Summer League team, so he's kind of more relevant. If he looks good in Summer League, sure, sign him. But, I don't know. Summer League is like a trial for me. Bobby Portis is... Milwaukee's going to re-sign him.
Yeah. He's not... He's either going to re-sign for the tax mid-level with Milwaukee or get paid somewhere else, and we can't pay him more than Milwaukee can pay him, so he's either going to stay there or get much more than we can offer.
I'm tempted to give Alex Wolf a 5-minute ban because he just said Dragon Bender.
Yes, we've talked about Kawhi a lot, Jonathan. Sorry, it's not possible. We're not going to do it. I mean, we definitely should try, but yeah. Portal's not a free agent, but I mean, we could try to trade for him.
We'd have to give up a first, most likely, though, which I'm just, we need to use that for bigger and better players.
Yep.
Hamidou Diallo is likely going to be a restricted free agent. I don't think we'll be able to sign him like I did in the mock-off season.
Yeah.
He's worth more than the taxpayer mid-level exception, so that was a steal.
I was the Pistons. I did not give him a restricted offer because it allowed me to get to the third pick in the draft, and that was the only reason why. So it wasn't what happened in real life. Yeah,
ridiculous. But Hamidou Diallo is one of the most underrated free agents this year. I wouldn't say I love his game, but like he's worth more than like 5-6 million. I think he's worth like 8 to 10. But like he's a guy I hadn't talked about, so I surprised people with that signing in the mock off season because like he's a restricted free agent and he's not really a guy that's gettable because of that.
Sarek is likely out for the year, so not a good signing or a trade for. We'd have to trade for him.
But Diallo last year averaged almost 12 points per game and 24 minutes per game. Shot 34% from 3, so his 3-point shot improved. 50% from 2. He's a great athlete. He's basically a better, smaller version of Derrick Jones Jr. And we paid Derrick Jones Jr. almost $10 million last year. So,
all right, I think it's time to wrap this up. People are getting out of control.
Or we just put them all in 5-minute timeouts.
We have no chance at Rashawn Holmes. He's going to get way more than we can offer.
Ersan Ilyasova should not be in our rotation next year. He was like not in the league for the first half of this season. Bismack Biyombo might be a good enough backup center, but I want something better than that. He'd be a minimum guy. Anthony Bennett? Anybody that says a guy who wouldn't be in our rotation, like whatsoever, like not even close, is getting a 5-minute ban. All right. Cody Zeller could be an interesting MLE target. Eric is a backup center. I don't really like him, but
analytics say he's okay, and then he always seems to be unavailable though. I think we need someone a little more dependable. That's the problem.
That's a good name to bring up.
Cantor is like dependable, like he's always there. That's one of the reasons why I think they might look to re-sign him. Is just because availability is a key trait in players. So, but yeah, there's a lot of guys like Zeller who, if they were just on the floor a little more, I think it would be good.
See you, Carson. Appreciate it.
Carson.
Kuzminskis, bro. People try to get banned with some of these names, I swear.
We're gonna sign your
Carson said Mario. I should ban him. We're not bringing back Mario Hazonia, man. Just kidding. Jeez. I was giving you guys the chance to ask serious questions, and you guys are just trolling, man. Then people were like, you should take questions from chat more. And then when I do, it's, Spencer Hawes, Kelvin Blevin's third nephew.
Dame didn't want Spencer Hawes, dude. That was Dame's, like, second year in the league, and we signed Kamen, but first we offered the mid-level exception to Spencer Hawes first, and he turned us down. So
Jared Allen is not an option. He's a restricted free agent, and he'll get offered way more than we can pay.
Yeah. He's going to get like 20 to 25 million probably.
Trade for Chris Dunn? Chris Dunn's already been traded.
Yeah.
Kevon Looney, I wouldn't want in our rotation.
Batum, we talked about a lot earlier.
Yeah, Batum would try and sign him with the MLE for sure. Alex and Antetokounmpo, Trevin, you really want another 5-minute ban? Dean Wade. Dean Wade, oh my god, man.
Wendell Carter's not a free agent, Beavis. Portis, go Blazers 05, we literally just talked about him like 2 minutes ago.
They say talk more to chat, and then they don't listen. PJ Tucker's going back to Milwaukee. They have his bird rights. You just won a championship with them. No Milwaukee Bucks players are realistic unless it's Bryn Forbes, who I don't want. He's a guard.
Yeah.
Or it's like a guy who didn't play for him, which I don't want because they're not rotation players.
Yep. I think we're at the point where we need to...
Yeah, anyway, thank you guys for tuning in for the stream. We'll catch you tomorrow. Live stream will start at 2 p.m. Our free agency stream, so make sure to tune in. That'll be over on Blazers Uprise. That's usually our biggest stream of the year. Last year's stream pulled almost 50,000 viewers, so hopefully we can, not at once, just total, so hopefully we can pass that, and have a pop-in live stream. It's, let's see.
Alright, that was funny.
What?
Don't ban Riddle, that was funny. He said Chandry Lamont.
Chandry.
My boy Chandry.
Yeah, so...
Shout out if you know what I'm talking about.
We'll have the live feeds of Woj's Twitter account and Sham's Twitter account. If you know any NBA fans that are going to be paying attention to free agency, feel free to, tell them about our stream. Help us out. Make sure you subscribe here if you haven't already. Subscribe over on Blazers Uprise if you haven't already. If you found this channel and don't know our main channel, just search Blazers Uprise. It's the one with the red logo. This channel is getting enough viewers. Had a lot of people in here tonight. This was popping. We actually surpassed 200 at one point live viewers, which might be a first. I don't remember, but yeah. So tomorrow will be popping. Tomorrow will be a lot of fun. Hopefully, fingers crossed. I'm very nervous for it. I'm gonna try and pull out all the stops in terms of the stream for you guys, including graphics. So hopefully you will be able to tune in. I think more people will tune in for it, Eric, because it's not like something that's like televised like the draft is on ESPN. Right.
Yep.
So a lot of people are just sitting on Twitter anyway, looking at Woj's and Sham's Twitter feeds. Just like last year, I'm going to have a live feed on the stream, on the screen of their Twitters that will update live. So it's legitimately, I don't know, it's legitimately legit. Anyway, anything else left to say?
No, thank everyone for watching, and we'll see you right at 2 tomorrow.
Yep, 2 p.m. So.
Tune in to see if Tori and I rage or are celebrating.
And we will save... There's an option now with my streaming software where I can save the last 2 minutes of the stream as a clip, so I'm going to try and... Throughout the stream, I'm going to try and save clips and reactions and whatnot, but... We will likely... I will try and put out a highlight video after the stream, a couple days after on Blazers Uprise. So, anyway, get some rest. Big day tomorrow. We'll see you in about 14 hours. What'd you gonna say?
Trevin put right at 2 in quotes, like he doesn't believe that we'll be live at 2. Let's prove him wrong.
Yeah, 2:05 around that time.
No, 2. We're doing it 2.
I mean, I still have a bunch of graphics to do, so.
Okay.
Not a bunch, but, you know, I don't care. Trevin, if I'm 10 minutes late because I'm pulling out all the stops, that's completely fine, okay? But, yeah, so we'll try and be live right at 2. Should be able to be live right at 2. I don't have to do as much work for this stream graphically as I did for the draft stream, so anyway. 2:15. We'll try it 2. We'll see. So, see you in approximately 14 hours, a little bit less. Hopefully the Blazers are able to pull some things out tomorrow. If they trade for, if they do a Siakam trade or something like that before free agency, we will go live before free agency. So if there's something big that happens with the Blazers, then tune in right about then. If not, we'll see you in 14 hours. Anything else, Eric?
Nope. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Yep. We will see you tomorrow. Until then,